And we're live. Friends from around the world, welcome to the Great Debate. Not a debate where both sides work to defeat one another, rather, a debate where both sides come together to find common ground. Today, we don't have a moderator. I stepped out of my moderator role and I'll be the one debating. If this goes well, maybe I'll do this more often. Debating today, Mordechai Ish Yamini. He is a settler living in the West Bank, aka Judea and Samaria, aka Palestine, aka Israel. Now that we pissed everybody off, let's get the show on the road. Quick formalities, actually. If you're new, like and subscribe. And a big shout out to our Patreon visionary members. We have Trivium Energy Pty Ltd, SOG Cannabis, Max Marine, Geffen Posner, Maya, and our one and only champion member, Rajia. It's great to have you all here with us. So, Mordechai. Also, you're Mordechai, aka Judaeus Maccabeus. That's your nickname that you sometimes debate. Yeah. You've debated Nazis before. You've debated anti-Semites. I've seen some of your debates. Let's start by telling people how we met, and I think that will naturally just take us to where we need to go.
All right. So we met because since you started this Sulha, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. That's a formality you need to do, right? Appreciate for having me on. Part of what you do I appreciate, part of what you do I disagree with. I'm sure we're going to get into that now. And how did we meet? Well, we met because when you started Sulha, which I forgot what you called it before, the Great Debate.
The Great Debate, yeah.
Yeah, when it was the Great Debate, I remember, I get to my feed in social media, I get hundreds of different Israel-Palestine stuff, and they're all pretty much the same. And I give everybody a 2-3 minute chance before I switch it off in disgust. And the first one that I watched of yours, I don't remember who the ones were debating, but there was something about your moderation and the way you were running the dialogue that caught my interest. And I just started watching it. And as you know, I'm a settler. I'm known on social media for being, very right wing. But the kind of dialogue that was going on your show actually gave me hope. Doesn't mean it changed my mind, but it gave me hope in many ways that maybe on some level someday these two peoples can reach a agreement, and share this land, right? Something that gave me hope for a moment. Of course, the last war in Gaza completely changed that hope, but what didn't change was the fact that usually when I watch Jewish peace activists or Israeli peace activists, they spend all of their energy basically bashing Israel. They think it's very edgy to bash Israel. It's very cool. And very little time, saying anything about the Palestinians. And maybe they'll pay lip service. It's not nice to murder people, but they have a legitimate cause, right? But you are calling out both sides on disingenuous claims. Now, I can disagree with you on how you call out our side, but the fact that you as a peace activist, I hope you don't mind me calling you a peace activist,
sure.
Calls out the other side as well, I saw that as a mark of honesty. It intrigued me. And we started, we've been communicating, just you and I, talking about, chewing the fat, shooting the breeze, and about the IP conflict. And I don't talk about this to anyone because how long can we talk about it anymore? And at some point we decided, let's take this live. Maybe other people will find the dialogue interesting as well.
There we go. Well, I appreciate what you say, and it makes me, when I hear that what we do gives people hope, that's kind of what motivates me to continue this. You mentioned that it used to be the Great Debate. That's true. The Great Debate still exists. This is technically a Great Debate session, but it's a sub-session, a sub-brand under Sulha because we started doing more forms of content, just in case anybody was wondering how the brands interact. So we've had a good amount of back and forth. We actually agree on a fair amount, but we do have some core disagreements. Where do you want to start? We didn't even really talk where we'll start. We just knew the conversation would flow. You've seen a lot more of what I say than vice versa. Yeah. So what do I say that pisses you off?
what do you say that pisses me off? No, it doesn't piss me off, but I'll tell you the core disagreement I have with what I've heard from you. All right. You seem to believe that the Israeli-Arab conflict over this tiny little piece of land is a conflict that can be peacefully resolved through negotiations, through good faith, and through reaching a deal, through compromise. Okay, you believe that both sides have something that the other side wants that they can give up, and if both sides, if we agreed to show up in good faith and negotiate with our enemies, we would make an agreement. That seems to be your belief. Is that right?
Yeah. The show up in good faith, I don't think it's that simple, but yeah, I do think that there is certainly a path forward in which we could achieve peaceful coexistence on this land, without a doubt.
So that's something that I want to believe. I actually want to believe in this. I don't enjoy militarism. I'm not one who likes to believe the things that I believe, but the way I perceive the conflict as one that we, the Israeli side, the Jewish side, do not have what to give the Palestinian side that would satisfy them, other than completely dismantling our national project, meaning the end of Israel as we know it. Right? At worst, it's genocide. You have, let's say, I'm sure you have extremists on both sides. The most extreme Palestinians would be, oh, just kill them all for taking our land. And then the more moderate ones will be, no, we just want to have one state where everybody has equal rights, where the refugees have the right to return, which is a low-key way of saying we're going to outnumber the Yahud, we're going to outvote them, and we're going to turn this country into something else. Now, to the Western ear, to someone living in America and Europe, that doesn't sound so bad. That sounds like, okay, they just want to have democracy for everyone. Well, where could you go wrong with that? But democracy doesn't exist anywhere in the Middle East. And equal rights for differing ethnic groups in the Middle East doesn't happen. People kill each other here over minute religious differences. So great religious differences history that we
you're freezing up a little bit. Now you're completely frozen. We'll give him a minute to come back. If you can still hear this, maybe refresh your browser. Guys, we're also going to take some audience questions a little bit later. We'll try to get to as many as possible. Super Chat has just been activated in Israel, which is a way that you could donate through YouTube, and then your comment is highlighted. So we'll obviously get to Super Chats first. So if anybody has important comments or questions they want to ask Mordechai or myself, or comments you want me to read, then Super Chat them, and we'll get those read to you. Mordechai is frozen and not in the most appealing face. I think people will, that's going to be a meme. He's going to be memed, but all good. Oh, we lost him completely. So I could already give a response. I just don't want to have to give it twice. So I guess we'll start off with Starhopper, because Starhopper, I see you came feisty. I'm not going to put up with your shit today, but Starhopper said something. He goes, hold on. He goes, Adar thinks that if you're just nice to a snake, it will stop being a snake. And Starhopper also says he's not racist, but you're comparing Palestinians to snakes. The thing is, Palestinians are humans. And you're able to reconcile with humans. There's nothing inherent about a Palestinian that means we can't have peace with them. And if you think there is something inherent in Palestinians, well, then yeah, that's straight up racism. At least admit it, you know? This is there are things if you're nice to say, come up here, stay here. So okay, I guess we're just gonna take audience questions until Mordechai gets back. I see we have a fair amount of people here. I get, 2021, still internet connection problems. Hold on, he messaged me. Yeah, it's some connection issues. Just refresh and try to come back. Shai Levy asks, what's my background? Nothing impressive. I made Aliyah at age 18. I served in the IDF. After the IDF, I became a club promoter in Tel Aviv. Quickly worked up my way the promotion ladder and started running a team of promoters and doing my own parties. And then along the way, I understood that if I could use my social media to promote parties, then I could also use it to promote ideas. And then I just started speaking about the conflict, and slowly started doing more things involving activism. In 2018, I left the nightlife, joined blockchain just because I was getting too old for partying a few times a week. Once I started blockchain, I found that it was hard for me to have enough mental bandwidth to do both high tech and peace. So I naturally did less and less peace. Burning Man 2019, I was having a very introspective moment. I understood that I need to go back to the peace work, got back to Israel and launched Sulha. So that's kind of where we are today. And Mordechai is still frozen, so we'll take more audience questions. We could, if an audience member wants to hop on the chat and chat a little bit, you can. Evan Israel Brenner goes, Adar, it's an analogy. Please don't resort to the racism card to squash the conversation. So Evan, you might not know me well, but I very rarely just use the racism card. I've known Starhopper for a year now through chats. The amount of anti-Arab racist stuff he said is numerous. I could confidently say that Starhopper has negative attitude towards Arabs. If that's not considered anti-Arab racism, then I don't know what is. So it's not just playing the card. The dude doesn't like Arabs. Let's see. So I guess this is going to really be the gist of what I was going to debate Mordechai on, because he has less hope about how we could resolve the conflict. So what gives me hope? There's nothing inherent or innate about Palestinians. And I'm speaking to the Jewish audience members now, because a very common narrative, and we heard it from Mordechai himself, and he said it very sincerely, that he doesn't think that there's anything we can do to make peace with the Palestinians unless we dismantle Israel, and that's something Israelis will not agree with. And I'm very happy he said that, because I'm constantly calling out the rhetoric calling for Israel's dismantle, explaining how harmful it is and how much it fuels it pushes people to the right. It makes people more extreme in Israel when they hear that rhetoric. Okay, and we're now seeing Mordechai, a Jew living in the West Bank, expressing how that rhetoric has impacted him. So we need to stop with all rhetoric of dismantling Israel. It weakens the Palestinian cause by radicalizing Israelis. That said, there is nothing inherent or innate in Palestinians that says they are destined to hate Israelis. Their current hate or fear or dislike for Israelis is a result of circumstance, of their environment. That's what people are. We are products of our environment. If you were to take a Palestinian and raise him in a Jewish household, he would not grow up thinking there's anything wrong with Jews. And if he would love Jews, he would probably dislike Palestinians. And if you were to take a Jewish child and raise him in a Palestinian household, he would grow up thinking Israelis are the enemies. We are products of our environment. Israel has a large impact over the environment in which Palestinians live in. We control so much of their environment. And we could also, through international pressure and through making certain peace deals, ensure that the PA or whatever governing body the Palestinians have also change the environment in which a generation of people who want peace with their neighbors are born. And this is true for Israelis as well. There are many Israelis who don't see any future with Palestinians. They don't trust them. They think we are destined for war with one another. They don't think that Palestinians can ever have equal rights because then they'll try to kill us. Again, this is a result of an environment that caused Israelis to be that way. You change the environment, you change the people. So anybody who doesn't have hope, and I understand why people don't have hope. Like it's complex. There's a long process that we need to undergo in order to really solve the conflict here. But again, do not underestimate our ability to create an environment from which peacemakers can be born. And that's how we need to look at the conflict. Change the environment and the people change. Unfortunately, Mordechai is not here to debate back, but that would have been my response to what he said. Well, I guess, the chat can debate me. Evan asked if we've ever had any Islamic scholars on the show No, we haven't, but that's actually a great idea. I'd be happy to do that. If you have any names, feel free to recommend. I saw we did get one super chat. Raja, our one and only champion Patreon supporter, drops us a super chat. Just because there's never been a democracy in the Middle East doesn't mean we shouldn't try and achieve it in the land of Israel, Palestine. Yeah, I agree. Thanks for the donation, Raja. And just because something didn't exist in the past doesn't mean it didn't exist in the future. There wasn't a democracy before the day there was a democracy. You could say this about every progress that humans have made since the beginning of time didn't exist before the day they began to exist. But it is understandable why people would look at their surroundings and say, if it hasn't worked anywhere else, why would it work here? The idea is something about Middle Eastern culture just isn't ripe for democracy, but also the world is changing very fast. Another thing that should give us hope, many Israelis, they look at the Middle East, they look at other countries, they say, look at the human rights abuses, look at the amount of violence. Where are all the Jews in the Middle Eastern countries? How do Middle Eastern countries treat minorities? How do they treat women? How do they treat gays, right? This is commonly said. And it's true. The Middle East is not doing well in terms of human rights. Hold on, I see we have Mordechai back. I'll finish this thought. If we look at who was the most violent place on earth for hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 years, was Europe. That's today one of the most peaceful places on earth. If we look at Scandinavian countries, some of the most peaceful countries in the world, Scandinavians have Viking blood running through their veins, right? People change, cultures change, environments change. There's no reason to be fatalistic and think just because something has been some way, it therefore will be that way forever. Mordechai, I just spent the
reasons people change.
I just spent the last 10 minutes destroying all your arguments, and now I'm going to need to. Were you able to hear while you were trying to get back on?
I'm a leftist now. No, not at all. Look, one of the reasons people change is because the violent ones tend to die off faster and they breed less. If you think about the First World War, how much of England died out? So all the boys that went out to war and didn't come back, they didn't have kids. They've been hanging thieves and rapists and murderers for hundreds of years. They've been taking a certain percentage of people out of their population. So today, white English people are obviously they're some of the most peaceful people on earth now, but they started off like the most violent ones today. So yeah. I don't know how much of it had to do with an actual change in the gene pool, but that's true that, and again, I'm not even sure it comes down to the most violent. It could be the bravest, right? Who's most likely to fight in a war? The most courageous, not necessarily the most violent, or it could maybe be both. And then many countries have a mandatory draft. So again, that's also kind of, I don't know. The draft isn't most of it. I think most of it had to do with just they used to execute a lot of people. I forgot the actual statistics, but it's horrifying how many criminals these guys executed in Western Europe. So that thinned out the pool, and those people over hundreds of years, they get rotated out of society.
It's an interesting
That's
point.
not what this debate is about.
No. It's an interesting point. You might be on something. It might partially be attributed to that, but I think we also need to acknowledge the fact that Enlightenment happened in Europe. There was a huge cultural change. We started valuing human rights. I say we, but I guess as an Ashkenazi Jew, I get to say we. I was there my family was there during Enlightenment.
As a European.
As an Ashkenazi Jew, yeah, we. We start valuing human rights and science and rationality and these concepts that very much change the environment. So, yeah, maybe like violent people being bred out of the gene pool, perhaps, but we shouldn't underestimate culture and the impact.
I agree, but see, that's the irony of it all. When you bring up these European values and you use them as like, well, you see, if Europeans can do it, we can do it in the Middle East. That's kind of what's driving the conflict in a way. Because one of the things that you'll hear our enemies always say, and I don't accuse them of being disingenuous when they say that, they say, you guys come to the Middle East with your European mindset, your Khazars, you come with your like Enlightenment values. We don't want any of this degeneracy here in the Middle East. That's what's ultimately, in a way, that's what's bothering them, maybe more than the actual nationalist conflict. They feel like we're a strange presence here. In a way, I feel, and many people would agree with me here, right? I'm going to make a statement that if you looked at the Jewish nation in the Middle East, right? So you have people who are Ashkenaz Jews who tend to vote left, who tend to want to make a territorial compromise. On a personal level, they tend to get along with Arabs, much less than Mizrahi Jews, who maybe vote for Ben Gvir, but they have close relationships with actual Arabs. And if everybody here was super right-wing, maybe the conflict would exist on a much lower scale than you think it is. Maybe what's ultimately driving the conflict is the feeling of what are these Europeans doing in our land?
Yeah, I hear that. I think that there could be a level of truth to it, but I think it's also conveniently weaponized by certain people, similar to how you're doing it. And I'll tell you how. I think part of the reason that we were not accepted on this land is because we did come as colonizers, right? We were a European force with a different language. Our skin tone was probably lighter than the people who were living here. Language was different, clothes were different. Also, the ones who came were pretty much atheists. That's true, but you and many others then extend this argument and say the idea that human rights is important and that negotiation can work. I don't think it needs to extend that far. I think it's true that if we were more like the people of the Middle East, we would have been more accepted, but that doesn't mean that the idea that negotiation can be an important tool towards solving the conflict is just void. I don't think those things contradict. So I agree to an extent. I just don't think that justifies us not caring about human rights or equality or any of these Western values, you could say.
Well, it's hard for me to make the argument that we shouldn't care about human rights, or I would never say that.
But aren't you saying that is like something that's a Western value that don't work here? Like you're saying in the Middle East, they don't care about.
I feel like here over here in the Middle East, the sense that myself and people like myself have is that when we talk about good faith, we talk about negotiations, human rights, and so on, it's not understood by the local population the way it would be understood in, let's say, Austria today or America. It's understood in a different way, right? Eventually, negotiations happen. Like, look around us. Look at Lebanon, right? Lebanon had a bloody civil war. It reached a certain equilibrium. Look at Syria. Look at Iraq.
Right, exactly.
The Arabs over here, the Arabs here in Israel are not. They're not that different than the Arabs in Syria and in Lebanon or in Iraq. So to assume that we would achieve more by offering territorial compromise in my opinion, I'm not convinced. I would like to be convinced. In other words, I just want to make it clear. If I was convinced that we had some parcel of land, there was something we can give the Arabs, the Arab world at large, that would put an end to the conflict, I would probably be on the left. But the sense that I get from them is that they're not interested in that anything we give them is a springboard to continue the conflict until the final goal. Like they're not like Northern Ireland and Ireland, like England and Ireland. It's not, they don't look at the world the way we look at the world, that's my main disagreement with you. Otherwise, I'd be completely in your camp.
Yeah. So,
and I think I speak for many people on the right who feel that way.
Yeah. So when you were gone, I actually thanked you for bringing up that point, because I explained how the rhetoric to dismantle Israel really strengthens your position. Your position would be very weak if we wouldn't constantly hearing rhetoric about dismantling Israel. And now that rhetoric has been normalized in like Western social justice spaces as well. So your position has legitimacy because that rhetoric actually exists. And the other thing I spoke about when you weren't here is how environment changed people. But you've heard me speak about this before in our little one-on-one chats. Don't you think? Do you not think that we as a nation can create a situation where the Palestinians living here can get a great deal, be happy with their deal, and see that living with us in peace is in their best interest as well, that they don't have to be in constant conflict with us until the entire land is dismantled? Do you really think that's impossible?
I'll answer your question in two stages, if I may. Before I say if I think it's possible, I'll say that even if I were to be convinced that the Palestinians as a collective, and of course I'm not speaking about Palestinians as individuals, but as a collective national movement, they can put their conflict aside and agree to live side by side with Israel. Even if I were to believe that that's a possibility, and I'm yet to be convinced of that, there are outside forces like Iran, Qatar, maybe others that we don't even know of, maybe Turkey, I don't know, maybe there are other countries as well, but we know for sure, for example, that the last round of riots, a lot of it was financed by Iran, right? What does that mean in practical terms? That means that even if we were to reach a situation where here in Israel itself, I'm not talking about the territories that are in conflict in Judea and Samaria, Yaffo and Lod, right? We had great coexistence with these guys, right? And I don't think that most of them supported the rioting. What I think was there's a criminal element among them that was financed and pushed to riot. And that set us back 10 years. It was very easy for outside destructive forces to do that. So I think that even if and that's talking about Arabs living in Israel who have all the benefits of Israeli citizenship and know that they live here better than they would live in any other Arab country in the world. And yet, this set us back as a nation trying to, live together with them. It set us back, a decade, 2 decades? I can't measure it. So my fear is that even if that was possible with the Palestinians and the disputed territories, it would be too easy for destructive forces from the outside to destroy it. And that kind of makes me hopeless. I don't have a solution to that problem.
Yeah, so I think you bring up an excellent point, outside forces, because it just goes to show that even if Israelis and Palestinians would do everything right, then who's to say Iran or Qatar or Turkey wouldn't try to put a stick in the wheels, right?
And they're doing that now.
Right. So I think that you've made this point to me before, and I think it's an excellent point in terms of destroying people's hope. That said, if we could acknowledge that there's immense progress we could make, if that isn't in our control, if there's a lot we can do to change the environment.
Like, give me an example.
For example, removing the military from the West Bank and replacing it with a civilian force of who speaks fluent Arabic, who treat Palestinians with dignity and respect, and if somebody abuses their power, they're held accountable. Like Like,
Didn't we
we could do
have
that.
civil administration though? Like after 67.
No,
I mean,
but Palestinians are living under another nation's military rule. The psychological toll this plays on them, the fact that soldiers arrest children, the fact that they need to wait at checkpoints to get in between from town to town, the fact that soldiers can just search your home often on faulty intelligence. They could wreck your home searching for something they never find. The whole concept of lirot nochechut, which is showing our presence. This is all stuff that we don't need. Removing much of what I just said, most of what I just said, does not put Israelis in immediate danger, but it causes immense collective punishment to the Palestinians. That radicalizes them. That ensures that they will remain our enemy for decades to come.
Okay, so I've heard this argument in the past, right? But I'm sure that you're aware that before 1967, there were Fedayun. There was secular Palestinian terrorists that were at worse than Hamas in their viciousness. You just look at the autopsy reports of like the Munich massacres. These people, they didn't just commit terror to bring attention to the Palestinian cause. The hatred they have for us runs really, really deep. And I don't know that. And I even if I were to concede that the military occupation of Judea and Samaria is not pleasant for the Palestinians, and obviously it can radicalize them. But I don't think that they weren't radicalized before. I think they were already radicalized. Arafat, the PLO, the PFLP, they were doing this kind of thing before. They were hijacking buses, killing kids in schools, and there was no 67 borders. In fact, they were under Jordan. Right? And these were refugees that were weaponized by the larger Arab world. Again, outside forces manipulating these, that time they weren't Palestinians yet, but they were manipulating these Arabs to be used as a weapon against us. I don't think that pulling the military out would make their lives easier in many ways, but it definitely would have a toll in Jewish lives. Many Jews would be killed because we're actually stopping.
Not if it's replaced. Not if it's replaced with a peacekeeping force.
What's the difference? What's the difference between a peacekeeping force and a military force? Does a peacekeeping force have guns?
Yeah, they have guns. It's just that they're not 18 to 21. They speak fluent Arabic. There's a much higher level of accountability.
You're saying we should have a better military, a more professional military.
Way more
more professional. So I would agree that look, I'm as someone who served, and you served as well, and anyone else who's watching this show has served. We can all agree that Israel's military needs to improve on many levels, both combat readiness as well as professionalism, and how dealing with right now we're dealing with counterinsurgency, right? That's dealing with counterinsurgency means you have to speak the language, you have to get along with the locals, and I would agree with that. And I would agree that it would help, but I don't think that would have any bearing on ending the conflict or even reaching a equitable solution of the conflict. Because I think that you underestimate how much these people believe that the entire land is theirs, and how much they believe that we're a foreign element in this land that needs to be removed like a cancer. And that belief started before there was a military occupation and continues now. So by removing the military occupation, I would agree that it would help them feel better, give them easier lives maybe, but I think it would bring the conflict closer. It would be like the Gaza effect. We pull out, they would get rockets, and then not only that, we would be, just like today we are demonized for Gaza, more than when we actually occupied Gaza. I remember when we were occupying Gaza, we weren't so bad. Now we're worse. And back then, Sharon was saying, we're going to leave Gaza and give it to the Palestinians. They can do whatever they want. And if they do anything wrong, we're going to squash them. And the whole world's going to love us for it because they're going to say, look, these guys gave up Gaza. I feel like if we improve the military and we train them better and so on, that's fine, but it's still an occupation. The fact that we call it a peacekeeping force doesn't mean it's not an occupation anymore. And if you're talking about removing the occupation, I think we're going to have Gaza on steroids.
Right. So a few things. It's not about a unilateral pullout like we did in Gaza. I realize the amount of Israelis that trust that is close to zero, and rightfully so because of what happened in Gaza. And I don't think, I'm not talking about improving the military. I want it to be a civilian force. we cannot have the Palestinian people living under another nation's military. It should probably also be primarily Israeli Arabs or even Palestinians, right? People who can speak Arabic. They need to feel like these people are not here to control them, but are also there to protect them. Now, what this force looks like, exactly what it does, we could have a very long discussion about it. But there's another point you made that I really think that you're missing something. It's true that radicalization existed before, without a doubt. You could look at the Hebron massacre as a point of radicalization, right? Jews were massacred in Hebron. But radicalization, it's not zero sum. It's not that either populations are radical or they're not. There's a percentage. There's how radical they are. And if you actually look at the numbers, there is some polling on this. The Palestinian population is more radical now than they were 20 years ago and 40 years ago. So their environment is having an effect on them. And obviously it's going to. I saw a post the other day. It said, Palestinians don't need to teach their children to hate. Israel will give them a lesson for free. And it's true. If you grow up and the only Israelis you meet are soldiers who don't treat you with respect, who hold you up at checkpoints, who sometimes humiliate you, who sometimes abuse you, obviously you're going to hate Israelis. So it's true that there was radicalization prior to us occupying the West Bank, but not to the same extent there is today. And if we can reduce radicalization by 20%, 40%, 50%, who knows what the number is, that's still progress. That's step one. We need to also work with the PA or whatever governing body there will be and make deals with them, for example, to improve their textbooks, to stop teaching that we're like just Khazars. There's a lot of Holocaust denial, right? There's certain things we could do by making agreements. We don't even negotiate with them. There's been no negotiation. So the whole idea, just accepting it as they're extreme, they'll never accept us. It's accepting that we are destined to oppress another group of people, and there's nothing we can do about it. Like we can't accept that as our destiny. Like we should do everything in our power, to not be in this situation.
Okay, so I don't want to be this black pilling negative guy, so I'm going to temper what I'm saying with where I do see hope, right? But in a different way than you do, right? Don't forget that the Palestinians as a collective identity, and I just want to repeat that I disagree with some of the things you said. Okay, I'm a settler. I live in a hilltop. I'm surrounded by Palestinian villages. I have more Palestinian neighbors than Jewish neighbors, and I spend more time actually with Palestinians than with Jews in my day-to-day life in the farm that I live on. Right? Hold on, my dog is making noise. Stop it. Focus. So look, I don't agree that these daily humiliations is what's radicalizing them. These different villages, the villages that I'm lucky enough to be around, villages of people that are moderate. They're okay with Israel. They would rather be annexed than be Palestine. They can't stand the PA, and I've never had a problem. During the worst of the riots, I've been in the village, which is an Area B technically, and I spend time in people's homes. I go there unarmed. I do business with them. We're neighbors. So, like, I don't, and they don't. Yeah, they do have to go through checkpoints, but they understand that other villages are not as friendly, and they create terror. And the reason there's checkpoints and the reason there's soldiers everywhere is in order to save lives. Are you hearing this noise?
Yeah, but it's okay. Sorry. It's okay.
So hold on. Let me just get rid of the dog.
Yeah, no problem. I do want to, in the meantime, I do want to get to the super chats, but it seems like, did they disappear after a certain amount of time? Hold on one second. That would kind of be messed up.
Well, I cost you money?
No. I mean, super chat is new in Israel. I didn't know that.
Super chats?
Dude, we got some awesome super chats today. Yeah, you go ahead. I'm with you.
You want to do super chats now, or you want me to finish my point?
Yeah, but finish your point for sure, and then we'll do super chats. And then
what I'm saying is that first, I disagree that it's this kind of heavy occupation, and people say that, but the reality is that those Arabs who get along with us peacefully understand why they need to wait on at a checkpoint. They understand why there's checkpoints, and they understand why there's soldiers. It makes sense to them because they know that there are those that would kill innocent civilians. And then the other point I want to make is that I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the Palestinians as a collective identity. From the 30s, they were aligned with Hitler as a collective identity. Not every Palestinian was a Nazi, but the Palestinian, whatever early blossoming of that national movement that existed, they were aligned with Hitler from the first day, as were many of the Arabs at the time. I'll grant that. They hated us all the time. Yes, there was different levels of how radicalized they were and how they taught, but the difference was in degree. It wasn't a real difference. I don't think that there's something that the Israelis have that we can give them that would satisfy them the way things are today. It doesn't mean that I'm hopeless and that I'm fatalistic. I'm not. I think, on the contrary, Adar, I think that if Israel were to be really tough, more like me rather than more like you, and the Palestinians were in fear of us, like they fear Assad or like they feared Saddam. I'm not saying we should be as bad as Saddam, as bad as Assad, but you could understand how Arabs feared these leaders, right? I think then there would be more of a chance of a peace agreement with them, because I think they would be more forthcoming and say, all right, these Jews, we can't mess with them. Whereas today, they feel like one intifada and we're giving them the West Bank, and that gives them hope. They say, if we kill enough of them, we commit enough terror, we're going to get more. I kind of feel that in a roundabout way, like kind of the way the Netanyahu doctrine. I know Netanyahu is soon going to be gone, looks like, right? But what's the Netanyahu doctrine? He says that if we're going to be tough, the Arabs are going to come asking for peace, and they're not going to be making without any preconditions. I feel like with the Palestinians, that's also true. I think that we're too soft on them as not individuals, but as a national movement. Like when they riot in the Temple Mount, we give up. Instead of closing the Temple Mount to them and starting Jewish services in the Temple Mount as a result. Now, we think that would create World War III. I think that would indicate to them, that would signal to them that we mean business, right? So I think that my approach would actually bring peace, because at the end, they would be suing for peace. They go, we don't want to mess with these guys. Whereas if they see your position being taken, it's going to embolden them. That's my view.
You don't think that Palestinians don't already fear the IDF to a very great extent?
No, not in the West Bank. They feel they can do whatever they want. They can mock us. They'll literally like throw things at us. They'll throw a refrigerator from a roof. The children, think of how many IDF guys watching this had the experience of being humiliated or attacked or pushed around by Palestinians. They couldn't do anything because the rules of engagement were such, right? They don't really fear us. They know that we're militarily superior, but they also know they can get away with a lot. They know that we're held back by our own rules.
So this is hard to debate, because it's just us having a completely different understanding of how they perceive us. To me, it seems, from my conversations with Palestinians, that they do fear us tremendously. They don't always admit it because of their pride. They don't want to admit that they're scared of their enemy. But what your suggestion is just to further brutalize them, with the hope that further brutalizing them is going to make them less radical. What human being? It's almost like beat them into submission. Like that. That's
because it's a conflict. We're in a war. I'm sorry, we didn't call this war. Okay, we are in a state of war with. The truth is, it's not with these Palestinians. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
It's just the whole idea that beating them into submission will work and not just make them more desperate and more radical. Like I don't know why you think that's going to happen. Most humans, when their back is up against the wall, they get more violent, more aggressive. Most humans, when they're brutalized by someone, they hate that person more. This is this is a common notion amongst the Israeli right that the tougher we are, the more they'll respect us. I don't know. We've killed. How many Palestinians have been killed? How many have been injured?
We kill less Palestinians than King Hussein, and they love King Hussein compared to us. We kill less Palestinians than Assad. They love Assad compared to us. Maybe we should have been killing as much as Assad. If love is what you want from them, you should kill more of them. Using your. I'm not saying we should do that, but I'm saying that was the measurement, right? How many Palestinians?
I think if Palestinians in Jordan lived like Palestinians in the West Bank, then they would not be too fond of King Hussein. Like let's be real. It's that
I don't know how fond they are, but they respect him. They're not killing Jordanian citizens in the street anymore. They started doing their little thing that they do with Jordan. And what did King Hussein do? He killed 21,000 of them in a month, or something like that. I don't know the exact number. Yeah. Like in 1 month, he killed 20,000 of them, and I don't respect that, obviously, because we don't think in those terms. But the entire conflict.
Isn't that what you're suggesting? Isn't that what you're suggesting, though? That you're essentially saying we should kill more Palestinians.
What I'm suggesting is that we understand in our minds where we are. And where are we? We are in a conflict with about 500 million people who think that this tiny little portion of the Middle East, that there's not enough room for Jews to have a state in the Middle East. And they've attacked us with armies several times and failed. And now they funnel all that anger and all of that hatred through this victim group that they've built up, which are the Palestinians. I look at it philosophically. I don't look at the Palestinians as the way you see them, as this tiny nation of people who just want freedom and just want their state. I see them as an extension of the pan-Arab desire to get rid of this foreign influence in the Middle East, to get rid of these Khazars, to get rid of these what they see as colonial powers. And that's why they fund them. That's why they'll never give them citizenship in their own countries. That's why they'll discriminate against them, but only fund what it takes to turn them into better terrorists, into a thorn in our side. So the Palestinians are an extension. They're not. I don't see them. I could feel bad for individual Palestinians, but again, the collective national identity of the Palestinians, I can't help but see them as an extension of the pan-Arab and maybe even Islamist movement to displace us from this land. And I don't see them wanting to be something else either. Their entire identity their map is always going to be the map of Israel. So before 67, it's going to be where Israel is. After 67, it's always following us. It's almost like they're a mirror image of us.
Well, but in all fairness, the whole map thing, I hear people say that, but we did the same exact thing. We decided that the map of Israel is the entire land from the river to the sea, and so did they. So, that charge goes both ways.
That does. I'll grant you that, but they were not asking for the West Bank when they had the West Bank. So when Jordan had the West Bank and Gaza and Egypt had Gaza, they weren't saying, give us Gaza, give us the West Bank. That wasn't give us East Jerusalem. It was obvious that it goes to Jordan. And what were they being told by their Arab brothers? We're going to slaughter the Jews and give you Tel Aviv and Haifa. And the Palestinians, yeah, sure, we'll take that. And then instead of slaughtering us, they got defeated. And now they want the West Bank. So I'm sorry that I see that as disingenuous. And I think that the request for the West Bank is going to end up just like Gaza. In other words, they're going to use it as a springboard to attack us from, and we're going to be the bad guy. Even if we do it with an agreement, and even if we do it, because they're always going to be weaker, and they learned how to be victims. Before that, they were outnumbering us. We're going to throw the Jews into the sea. Pre-67, they were stupid. They didn't understand that the world likes the victim, so they let us be the victim. Now, they make sure, so there's like 1 billion people being victims. All these guys marching for Palestine, Pakistanis and Bengalis, marching for Pakistan, for Palestine in New York and in London, right? They are all part of these victims, and now it's intersectional victims. Blacks in America are victims. BLM is fighting for Palestinians, right? Why? Because they managed to switch the story around, and they won't attack us militarily. They're just going to attack us, through terror, which is the weapon of the weak. And therefore, I can't help but feel that whatever it is we give them, some of the hatred may go down. They'll take it out of their books and they'll put it back in their books. We can't really control their education. We can't control their lives. We can't control their military. If we give them the land, they're going to have a military. I think that the Palestinian national identity is mutually exclusive with ours. And I think it's a fight to the death between these two people. And I think that if we're serious, if we have to understand that we're in an old conflict that started in 48 or even earlier, and if we want to exist in this land, we have to be ready to fight. And if we're ready to fight, and our enemies know that we're ready to fight, then maybe they'll negotiate with us, but maybe not. If we're fighting a war, waiting to negotiate peace at any moment, then the enemy knows that they have the upper hand. I don't see the enemy as the Palestinians. I see the enemy as a greater Arab world. And the Palestinians are just an extension. They're the tip of the spear used to attack us. And I think that I think that whatever we give them will be used against us. And I think that, again, understanding that we're in conflict may bring peace. It may not. It may mean that we'll ethnically cleanse them, but otherwise we're ethnically cleansed. It's a fight between two ideas, and one of them is going to win.
So, a few things. First of all, you say that it's the entire Arab world, but we have seen that the Arab world is beginning to warm up to us. This more than anything, should give you hope that things change, right? And really, this is my biggest issue with your position, is that you think that there's something inherent about a given person or group of people's ideology that cannot change, and you do not trust our ability to impact change. Like, you're just saying they are destined to hate us and there's nothing we can do about it.
I'm putting off the video for a second, but
no problem. So a major difference in how we see things is how much there's a great disparity in how much I think we can impact change compared to what you think. You think we can't. You think we just need to be up in arms and fight, because if we don't fight, then they'll kill us. And it's going to be like that forever. Well, my position is that if the environment changes, so will the people change. And as we've seen, who would have thought that now Jews are safer in UAE than they are in New York? I was just in Dubai last week. Think about that.
How was it, by the way? How was Dubai, by the way? I forgot to ask you.
It was cool. Very, very cool city. We could talk about it more later. So the whole idea that the Arab world is destined to destroy us, when Jews are now traveling to UAE and Bahrain and Morocco and soon to be Saudi Arabia probably, right? To think that we are destined to be killing one another, and to think that we cannot change the environment that the Palestinians currently live in to make them not hate us. You really lack hope, and it's like you lack the belief that we have the ability to change the environment of the land when we control the majority of the environment of the land.
Do you think that UAE makes peace with us because we like us? Because all of a sudden
but it doesn't matter.
The Jews are nice.
No, but that's fine. They don't need to like us. They just need to see that living in peace with us is better than eternal war. And just the way UAE, but the fact that UAE realized that means other nations can realize that too. There's no gene in Arabs that says hate Jews. There's no gene in Arabs that says. I never said that.
I know.
I don't
dislike them, and I don't.
No. Again, so the fact that there's not a gene means it's purely a result of environment, and environment changes. So it's like right. But let's put that point aside, because I want to look at it another way. You gave a proposition to how we change them. We got to be tougher, right? You'd agree that your proposition would cause them more harm? A fair deal more harm?
I don't know. If we were tougher with Gaza, if we were tougher with Gaza, maybe they wouldn't be destroyed right now. If we would have crushed them from the first missile, maybe they wouldn't have had. What does that mean? What does that
mean to crush them, though?
Absolutely destroy Hamas.
Yeah, well, destroy Hamas,
kill 5,000 people. Yeah, kill 5,000.
Probably more.
10,000. Yeah, I mean, but the guys who joined Hamas, these people are worse than the worst of the Nazis, right? I mean, they talk not only about wiping out all the Jews in Israel, but then following them everywhere in the world and wiping them out there as well. Not that they could do it; they're too dumb to do that. But that's their ideology. I'm not worried. I'm not embarrassed to say let's kill 50,000 Hamas guys or whatever. No, whatever their numbers are, we kill enough of them for them to be crushed, and then the people in Gaza would have a much better life. Gaza would be rebuilt. Maybe they'll have a free zone. Maybe they'll be trade. They can all come to work. They used to work in Israel. Israelis used to go to Gaza and buy chalot for Shabbat.
Mordechai,
sorry, I'm haranguing.
No, real quick. So you're thinking that maybe again, let's acknowledge we propose different ways, two vastly different ways in which to create a more peaceful land, right? And we're both assuming that they would work.
No. That's not really the case, because the truth is, I'll tell you why. I think that our disagreement runs much deeper than two different ways to achieve peace. I think that we have completely different views of the world, of history, of the Jewish nation. Okay, you look at the Jewish nation and Zionism. I'm speaking for you, and tell me if I'm wrong. Okay, you look at the situation today, you put it in a box, you're like, okay, here we are, there's a conflict, two people are fighting over land. Wouldn't it be nice if we can make an agreement, and since people are not genetically anti-Semitic, and I agree that they're not genetically anti-Semitic, then we can change your environment and that will bring peace. That's how you look at it, all right?
Right. That's my proposal, and your proposal is to be way more harsh. I just want us to acknowledge, because I'm getting to something. I'll
follow you, and then I'll...
We have completely different prescriptions to what we could acknowledge that there's a problem. We agree more or less on what the problem is, but we have completely different prescriptions. And neither of us can say with 100% confidence, and even 50% confidence, that our prescription would solve the conflict. Could you agree with that?
Yeah.
But since we can't know, it always makes sense to take the more humane, less harmful path, and at least try that before you're going to go and kill people. Harming another group of people should always be the last resort. And because we're both assuming what will work, let's try to do it with harming as few people as possible. And here's the thing: if Israel ever gets to a situation, and I don't think we're even close to being in this situation, where push comes to shove and it's one side or another, well, then I could see what you're proposing to make sense, if it's life or death. But we have so much power and so much leverage, it doesn't make sense, not logically or morally, to cause more harm to them when we haven't tried something else, when we haven't tried to construct an environment from which peacemakers will be born. And we have enough leverage to do that. So how can we morally get behind an approach that will severely harm another group of people?
Adar, I love you, man, because really you speak from a place of morality, and you speak from a place of like love, and I really appreciate that. It's hard for me to argue with you. That being said, I disagree with your fundamental assumptions. I don't disagree with your sentiment. I don't disagree with your feeling. I don't have any more pleasure in hurting my enemy than you do, okay? But here are the fundamental assumptions that I disagree with you on, okay? You said that we both have different solutions to the same problem, but neither of us are sure 100% or even 50% that our solution will work, right? So on that assumption, I'll disagree with you, because I don't know that my solution of being militant and being tough will bring peace, but I do know that will protect my people. My first responsibility is to my own family, to my own blood. It doesn't mean that I don't care about another nation, but my blood, my nation is my first priority, and then other nations, okay? So in a conflict between two people, I know this is not very popular in 2021 to say, but my nation, über alles in der Welt, I don't care. I'm not embarrassed of being a nationalist, and I'm not embarrassed of loving my own tribe, my own people. And I think that if everybody cared about their people as much as I cared about mine, maybe the world would be a little better. All right, but so I don't know that it will bring peace, but I know that it'll protect mine. Whereas what you're purporting to do, I think will cause, not only will it cause more deaths of people on my side, which that's my first priority, but ultimately it will cause more death of people on the other side. Why? Like Gaza, it would force us to get into really bloody conflict where we already gave up territory, where we don't have a military presence, we have like civilian presence or whatever that would be, and then we'd have to reinvade the land just in order not to have Tel Aviv destroyed by rockets and missiles and apartment buildings being blown up. We would have to reinvade, and it would be more human suffering from all sides. Sometimes, like the Talmudic phrase, sometimes being cruel is being kind, and sometimes being kind is being cruel. Understand? So that's how I see it. Sometimes you need to, in order, if you're kind to the cruel, you're being cruel to the kind. That's the exact saying, but I take it to say there's a time and place for kindness and love, and there's a time and place for war. When war is declared on you, and no one is offering you peace, and when we've tried, and I think we've made a good faith attempt, Rabin and Oslo. I remember buses exploding around Jerusalem, and I was a student in school, and I remember at the time Rabin was saying, these are the sacrifices we make for peace. Okay, and at that time, before this horrific intifada, most Israelis were for the agreement. Like the left managed to convince Israelis to make an agreement with the Palestinians and give up sovereignty and give them autonomy and let them have a police force and so on. So I don't agree with your assumption that if we just tried it, let's see something good will happen. I think it'll only bring disaster. And the reason I think so goes back to what I said earlier. It's because the ultimate drive of these people collectively, it's not a drive to live normally. It's not a drive to have a nation and to have a land and to have a flag and to have an anthem and to have sovereignty. The drive is what they say it is. It's to liberate Palestine from the river to the sea, to fulfill their Arab destiny of getting rid of this foreign influence of these horrific Jews who don't belong here. They should definitely not have sovereignty. And until they have that, I don't think they're going to rest. Does that mean that it's always going to be that way? No. I'm willing to be convinced that that's changing, if it changes. I would love it to change, and then I wouldn't have a problem with territorial compromise, right? King Solomon gave 30 cities to King Hiram of Tyre for giving him wood for the temple. Like I'm not one of these settlers who feels like every clump of earth I have to die over. I'm not that fatalistic. But I think that I have not seen from their side any willingness to compromise, and I think compromise on our side will only be interpreted as weakness. And another thing, I don't think we're as strong as you say we are. Yeah, we're stronger than the Palestinians because it's all a game. They've been manipulated to be this eternal victim, but behind them are maybe 500 million or more Muslims that are supporting this, and they're supporting this because they believe in that dream as well of cleansing the Middle East of this filth they see us as. I understand them. I don't think you do.
So we're going to pause. I'm going to do super chats and then I'll respond. We just need to respect those who have supported us. Unfortunately, I can't pull them up. I didn't know. So from now on, super chats will be read on the spot. But we have Yigal Kamal. $10. Thank you so much. Do you think it would be possible to maintain the goal of a Jewish state with a one-state solution with equal representation and something like a strong Senate which had equal numbers on each side? Let's start with that. We'll give quick responses, but it almost sounds like you're talking, Yigal, it almost sounds like you're talking about a federation solution. I don't support just a straight binational state. I don't think, it's extremely unpopular. It's not viable, but I think that would likely eventually lead to the destruction of Israel, or there's a high likelihood it would, and it would put Jews here in danger. But if there's a sophisticated governance structure that creates a balance of power between Israelis and Palestinians and ensures that both populations are safe, then yeah, I could definitely get behind that. I think we do need to be sophisticated in our approach, and a federation aims to achieve just that. Mordechai?
I think that if I think what's going to end up happening, that's not directly answers your question, but indirectly, what's going to end up happening is life is going to become unbearable for Jews in America, Europe, and in other places. They're all going to move to Israel, and then the demographic balance will be what it is today, and we'll just annex the West Bank and give them all citizenship, and we're still going to have 20% Palestinians, some belligerent, some friendly, just like we have today.
Wait, so you're supporting a binational state?
No, I think that I want to. I don't want to have a situation where I want the demographic balance between Israel and Jews and Arabs in Israel to remain what it is. Okay, so if we're going to bring in, if 10 million Jews from America are going to flee because America is going to turn into an unbearable place for Jews, as I believe is going to happen, then we can afford to annex the West Bank because we're going to maintain our demographic advantage. That's what I think, and then I'll just give them citizenship and say, all right, guys, here's your passport.
So yeah,
like everyone else.
Okay, you think we could do a binational state? So in there, you're to the left of me.
It wouldn't be binational. No, it would still be a Jewish state. We're still going to be 80% of the population.
But they'd be full equal citizens.
Yeah, I think at some point we're able to do that if we outnumber them enough, just like we did it in Lud. You think there's any difference between the Arabs in Lud and the Arabs in Ramallah? No, they're the same people.
No, no, their environments are different, so they're different people. Like
they're the same people. The environments are different because of circumstances.
No,
but
right.
The circumstances change. If now we have 10 million Jews moving to the West Bank because they're fleeing America, right? Then I know this sounds
I get what you're saying.
now,
yeah, in that sense, sure. But currently, they're different people because their environments are different.
Yeah, but the environments, they'll find themselves with Jewish neighbors. Here, take passports, vote. You know, I don't have a problem. I mean, if those who will engage in terror will be persecuted and whatnot.
So there we go. You heard it here first. Mordechai supports equal rights for all people from the river to the sea.
Under certain circumstances.
Next super chat, Evan Israel Brenner, $20. Thank you so much. He goes, these are such important conversations, and I just want to acknowledge the platform you provide for people with different points of view to discuss them respectfully. Thank you so much, Evan. That's exactly what we're here to do. And then Le Pêcheur, Brother Amiel, thank you. 50 shekels, and he wrote just to give a little support. Thank you so much.
Is his name Le Pêcheur? Is that his name?
His name's Amiel. I don't, but he's French.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what that means in.
Okay.
So let's get back. Let's get back to what we were debating. If we get more super chats, we'll go for them. I really appreciate them, and they ultimately do help us make more content. I currently don't do this full time, but I hope one day that I will be able to. So you said that you care more about keeping your people safe, but nothing I suggested puts Israelis in danger. So you made an argument against the unilateral pullout of the West Bank, but I'm not suggesting that. I think there's a whole lot we could do. I think 50% or so of the suffering Palestinians live with today can be eliminated by certain policy change that won't put us in danger. I genuinely think that. The other 50% is going to take a process to eliminate. And I agree, if we were to eliminate 100% of Palestinian suffering today, that suffering would move to them over to us. That's the tricky thing about this situation. If we just decide unilateral pull out of the West Bank, pull the settlers out, or even keep them there, the chance of Hamas taking over the West Bank and rockets flying on Tel Aviv is extremely high. I agree with you. So I don't support a unilateral pullout. I think there needs to be a process, but I think we could get 50% with a few small policy changes, and I think that we have a moral obligation to do so. I think as long as we control another population, then we have a responsibility to reduce the harm we cause them. And we have very little political discourse on how to actually do that. I don't remember all your other points. One of the other ones, again, it comes down to environment, and I don't want us to just keep going back and forth on this. But you did say you think that the situation could change. That one day Palestinian national aspiration doesn't need to include destroying Israel. Again,
Yeah, that could change.
right. So the question is, what can we do to help?
Bro, it's not up to us. The only thing we can do to help is to crush their hopes of destroying us. That's the only thing you can do to help. Anything less than crushing their hopes to destroy us,
again,
will only build it.
But now you're now you're supporting causing harm on an assumption. Like if we're going to make an assumption, let's support something that doesn't harm them.
We're in a conflict. The conflict never ended. Okay.
We have so much leverage and power that we don't need to be more aggressive and more harmful. We have that privilege.
So I kind of disagree with that. I don't think that we have as much leverage as it appears. They've set the stage in a way where the armies that attacked us before are not attacking us, and they only use terror and financing of terror as a way to attack us. But the goal of terror is not to get them a state so that they can be happy. It's to get them a state so that they can further leverage that to pry us out of this land. They say this. It's not something that it's not a conspiracy theory. So since that's the goal, as long as we agree that that's the goal, it would be foolhardy and suicidal to let them get anywhere closer to that. We need to be convinced that giving them this autonomy, state, army, whatever, is not a step further to wiping us out. As of now, they're giving us every reason to assume that any condition, anything that we give them will be used against us, not just against us to harm us in a small way, to harm us in a genocidal, ethnically cleansing way. Right? That's the signals that we're reading from them, not from us. That's my contention.
Given the current environment, I agree to an extent, but we can create a situation where their aggression towards us leads to worse. Imagine you structure a situation, right? And you work with the international community and the PA. We increase the quality of the lives of the Palestinians substantially. You're already going to have a less radical population. That's just how it works. The better your living conditions are, the less radical you are. So we know that's going to work. To think that would then somehow be used against us and they'll become more radical. Like, I understand that it's a common talking point, but why do you actually think that better living conditions are going to create a more radical population? And again, we could create better living conditions without risking our safety. And we have a moral obligation to do so. Like, why should that not be the starting point? Let's start with that. Hold on, and then I wanna go further and really put pressure, because if Israel agrees to do a whole lot to improve the lives, then we could use that as leverage to work with the PA and the international community to change the textbooks, to maybe some of the imams that are preaching hateful things, to put pressure on them to stop. You could do that. This could be part of a greater deal that we make with the Palestinians. The whole idea that doing that will make them want to kill us more, like, why?
It gives them hope. Because it gives them hope. It gives them more hope. That's why they're doing it now. Why do you think terrorists?
Yeah, but desperation has.
Why do you think this is where we disagree? You think terrorists are evil people who just want to kill children. I don't think they're evil. I think the reason
I don't like the term evil.
See, I think that it's not desperation that's causing terror. I think it's hope. I think they continue to commit acts of terror as long as they have hope that they're going to achieve their goals. You know when they're going to stop committing acts of terror? When they're absolutely hopeless. When they know that our resolve is steel. And that's what I think.
Okay, so I actually think that a lot of terrorists actually think that they are going to get rewarded in heaven for killing Jews. And to want to leave this world and go to a better world, you need to be desperate. You're less likely.
Simplistic.
Wait, but it plays into it plays into it. It's true that their families then get money and they're also remembered as martyrs. That's true too.
And each martyr, it's 1,000,000 shaheeds till Al-Quds, right? It's 1,000,000 shaheeds till Jerusalem. So your martyrdom, it's not just that you're going to go to heaven and get a gaggle of virgins. You're going to go to heaven. You're going to have a much better existence, but your martyrdom is contributing to the greater good of what? Of cleansing our land of this Jewish filth. That's what it is. And the people that are funding it, and the people that are promoting it, and even those imams that are sending kids to die, they don't think that it's good that that their own children die in these suicide attacks. They think that the suicide attacks are breaking our resolve. They say it's a web. They call us a Korea Kavish, right? We're a cobweb. So Nasrallah, if he's still alive, actually believes that acts of terror, or believed, inshallah he's dead, he believes that acts of terror are going to bring the dissolution of our state, of our nation, of our people. That's why they do it. My thing is to give them less hope. What you're doing is you're proving to them your approach, even though it's moral, even though it comes from a good place, and even though I'm sure that up in Shamayim, right, you're going to go to Gan Eden because you're a good person, but I still think that gives them hope. And that actually creates more terror, because they go back and say, you see these Jews? We resisted enough, and now they're giving us all of this stuff. And if we would not have resisted, if we wouldn't have had the shaheeds, they wouldn't have done that. Okay? And that's their narrative now. Right? It's literally what they're saying today in Lebanon and Iran and places like that. And I think that, on the contrary, I think when they have no hope, that's when terror will be lessened. They do it because they have hope. You know, and that gives them motivation. That's my view.
So we'll read super chats and then we'll continue. We got a few more. Evan, thanks for another super chat. Adar, can you address Mordechai's point of being larger regional conflict and not one between Israel and Palestinians? I agree there's a greater regional conflict here. I think it's one that we don't need to think is eternal. As we saw, the Middle East is already warming up to Israel's existence. They see that peace with us is better than eternal war with us. There's no reason to just think that we're destined for conflict with our neighbors. And I think if we do have peace with the Palestinians, that'll help. You can look at it two ways. You could say, make peace with the Palestinians and we'll have peace in the Middle East with our other Middle Eastern neighbors. Or first we need to solve peace with the Middle Eastern neighbors, then only then can we have peace with the Palestinians. I'm not sure what needs to happen first. I think they'll probably happen side by side with one another. But no, I don't think Mordechai is wrong that it is a greater regional conflict. I just don't think we're destined to be at war forever. You like the fact that France and Germany today is at peace after hating each other for so many centuries. And today the thought of France and Germany fighting one another is so foreign. Right. So that, don't think we're destined to war. The world changes. The world's changing faster than ever before. We need to ask ourselves, what do we need to do to create conditions in which peace will be created? And violence, violence and aggression. Well? Yeah. And violence and aggression should always be our last resort. There's one more super chat, but yeah, you can.
I'll just address that quickly regarding the new regional situation, which actually proves Bibi's doctrine that through strength you get peace. I don't think that the UAE and Saudi Arabia and other nations that are making peace with us are doing it because they realize that we're not so bad and that we're not in fact Khazars and that in fact we weren't so bad to the Palestinians. The reason they're doing it is obvious. They're scared of Iran. Okay, and their fear of Iran is an existential one, and they would rather have their Semitic cousins as allies against these Aryan invaders, who they also see as foreigners in the Middle East. By the way, they don't see the Iranians as part of the Middle East. They want to get rid of them, and they hate them as more than they hate us, even. Okay, and it's a flip, a reversal of situations where Iran used to be our ally when they were secular, and they were with us against the Arabs because they were scared of the Arabs. Now the Arabs are turning to us to help with Iran, and I think that they need us more than we need them. What do we need the UAE for? UAE will get swallowed by Iran in a minute, and I think that our condition for helping the Arab world deal with Iran should be them absorbing the Palestinian refugees, all of them that are right now in refugee camps, and a large part of the West Bank as well, should be resettled with reparations from us. No problem. We should pay them reparations, but we should have an arrangement with them with the Arabs that they gave us. Okay, as a result of the conflict between us, if you really want to have a lasting peace, we took Arab Jews into Israel, gave them citizenship. You took all of their land, all of their property, all of their values, right? We forgave Iraq for Hud, whatever it was. We forgave Morocco. We don't bring it up that much, right? Okay, please, as a gesture of good faith, that you really accept that we're here long term. You want us to help you with your existential threat of Iran. Take the Palestinians back. Iraq could use a couple of million Sunnis. It would be perfect for Iraq.
Right? What do you mean take them back?
Because by taking them back, I mean, first of all, a certain percentage of Palestinians did come from those countries, but I'm not going into that whole Hasbara talking point that they're all Arab foreigners. I know many of them were here. But I'm saying that there was a de facto exchange of populations that was stopped halfway. In 1948, there was a conflict which we did not declare. They declared it on us, all right? And in this conflict, as a result of this conflict, 700,000 or 800,000 Jews were driven out of lands that they were there before the invention of Islam. And about 700,000 Palestinians were driven out of Israel, all right? From the same conflict. And I'm not, even if we don't get into the blame game of who started, which is obvious who started, who invaded whom, but that was a result of the conflict. The one side of the conflict absorbed all of the Jews, gave them all citizenship. The other side didn't absorb any. They still hold them in refugee camps. If you want to make peace with us and you're in good faith, give those guys passports. Not only give those guys passports, the other ones here in the West Bank that still are in refugee camps should be taken back by those countries, as a result of that war. You fought a war. You're brothers with the Palestinians, pan-Arabism. You're willing to kill the Jews and throw them in the sea and finish the job that Hitler started. All of that rhetoric you're willing to do because you love your Palestinian brothers so much. Great. Now love them enough to give them a passport and give them equal citizenship and equal rights that you request we do. If you don't do that, that means that you want to make peace with us is disingenuous. You just need us to nuke Iran for you. And we're not your friar. We're not going to fight Iran for you for nothing. This is what we should ask for in return.
Okay, I hear you. I mean, I think it's a similar claim to the Palestinians who say, yeah, you just go back to Europe. I mean, us being on the land is not because we don't have any other place to go. It's because we view this land as our home. But I don't want to get stuck on this point because we do have a few more super chats. Yeah. Superman goes $5. Thank you. How can you expect people to not be radicalized when they don't even have enough electricity? I agree. We'll get back into the desperation.
Show me one Arab state that has more than 8 hours of electricity a day. The electricity, no. We're not preventing them from having electricity. Does Syria have electricity? Do you think Syrians have electricity 24/7? In Aleppo right now, do they have?
Hold on.
In Damascus?
I'm gonna admit ignorance here, and I don't know enough about the electricity issue. But to say that there aren't Arab states that don't have 24 hours of electricity a day, that's just not true. I'd say the majority of the Middle East.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'm right.
The majority.
Can we look it up? Can we Google it?
Yeah. Can one of our chat members find us one of our chat?
Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'll take it back. This is last time I checked. Most of them don't have.
Anyways,
by the way, go on.
We just have another super chat from Orhan Meyer, which is 50 NOK Norwegian crown. So cool. Thank you, Orhan. And then we have 50 Swedish crown. Interesting. We have our Scandinavian brothers supporting us. Rami Goff, thank you. And he goes, huh?
Aren't they in the EU? Didn't they use euros?
No, not Scandinavian countries. He goes,
Zero
and
deal.
Rami Ga goes, dude, be realistic. Bashar al-Assad killed 500,000 and used weapons of mass destruction, and that still didn't break their hope. This doesn't work.
Yes, it did break their hope. The Kurds in Syria are quiet. Like all of Assad's enemies in Syria were until the civil war, actually, with ISIS, they were all held down. But anyway.
I wanna get back, because this is actually an interesting conversation, one that I've never had. I'm confident in my claim that desperate people are going to act worse than hopeful people. You seem to think that it's the opposite. You seem to think that it's possible that if you sleep on this, you'll change your mind. In the heat of a debate, maybe you don't want to concede this point, but
I'll concede it. Convince me. Talk me out.
We'll both reflect on this and see. But I wish we had a behavioral psychologist here who could just straight up give us like the explanation and data to explain things. But
that wouldn't help, though, because you see, group dynamics is not the same as individual dynamics, and tribal societies are not the same as civic nationalists as opposed to ethno-nationalists. People have different ways of viewing the world, and I think that you're looking at it through a very white person lens. Even though you're a Jew and Jews are not white, you're looking at it in a very white way. I don't think like you breathe the Middle Eastern like hot desert.
I agree.
You're looking at it the way guys in Sweden would look at it. This is the Middle East, bro.
I agree that my views are probably more common in Sweden than the Middle East, and my contribution would be to help spread these views here, because there's certain views. We have something to take from every country in the world. So the fact that this is white thinking, if you want to call it white thinking, I don't think it's white thinking. It's possible that some of what I'm saying has Western influence. I have zero shame in that whatsoever.
Neither do I, and I would be happy to take it on. But it has to go both ways. You can't be all for like peace and love and making a deal when your enemy just sees that as weakness and sees that as a reason to zero in and kill you.
We're going into interesting territory, and I'm really thinking out loud here. Hope versus despair, essentially. People who are desperate, and this is true about humans and animals, right? I'm making a probably more simplistic claim based off what we know to be true about animals. When your back's up against the wall, when you have nothing to live for, when you're desperate, when you're in pain, you're more likely to be aggressive and violent. This we know to be true. What you're saying is that there's a deeper narrative, a collective narrative that actually reverses this logic and says that because they are so determined to take back the entire land, any concession we ever make will just increase their hope that they can get the entire land back. I personally, right? That's fair?
That's how I see it. Yeah, because that's their core value right now. So you don't have another core value. You see, an Israeli, I'm sorry, man, but Israelis, you know what our core value is? Well, we don't shut up about peace. Everything is shalom. All of our songs are about peace. We just want to. Our value is peace. So if anybody just like winks a little bit of peace at us, we'll give them anything because we just want to end the conflict. You know what their value is? Their value is the river to the sea, the land that was taken away from them. That's what they want. Again, it was stolen from them, from European invaders. Those European invaders need to be sent the F back to Europe. That's what's in their mind. You think that they're going to give it up because you're nice to them? Because you took off a little bit of like the military occupation is a little less militaristic because they speak Arabic better? You think that's going to change their mind about having everything taken from them? As far as they're concerned, we took everything from them.
I think that people's ideologies, generally speaking, are not as deep-rooted and consistent as people make them out to be. Most people, and you see this in politics all the time, very few people are truly principled in their reasoning and how they view things. I actually think it wouldn't be as hard as you're making it seem to change the Palestinian narrative that says from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I think if the conditions are good enough, and if they have more to gain in accepting Israel's right to exist on this land, whether
What do you
it's
mean by gain? Financial gain?
financial gain, freedom gain, the fact that when they're not in conflict with us, there's no checkpoints rather than yes checkpoints, the fact that they don't want their homes to get searched at night, the fact that they see that they could live a perfectly beautiful life side by side with Israel, like the whole concept that Palestinians don't have the ability to understand this, I just don't buy that. Like,
it's not that they don't have the ability. They have honor. You think that
yeah,
they'll sell
but
their
again,
honor out
no,
for money.
but it's
And for they
I-
have self-respect, a collective self-respect. That's how they see it. They're not bad people. They're other people that have a conflict with us. And to them, that is their deepest value. It would be an affront to their honor to give up their land, their identity, their dreams, their national aspirations for money and for peace and for life. That would be the biggest chilul Hashem to them. They would see that as a complete humiliation. I have a Palestinian friend, okay? He owns some land next to the settlement that one of the settlements needs. He's not anti-Israel. I deal with him. I buy construction material from him, and we're friends. We drink coffee. Israel has offered him millions to sell a tiny piece of land, and he won't do it. He doesn't have that much money, okay? He says, it's my honor. I'm not giving away my land. That's how they see it. There's nothing we can give them as far as money or peace that would make them want to live with us, to make them accept our existence here and the way things are now. I'm not hopeless that it won't change in the future. It may change in the future. But as of now, that's the situation. And I would agree with you that easing up their situation where possible should be done. I don't want to needlessly hurt them. But I'm not saying that we should crush them just to be mean. But in a conflict, in a war, I think we should be as tough as we need to be to win. And their hope for freeing Palestine from the river to the sea, that hope needs to be crushed by any means possible. That's what I think.
I agree that crush the idea that from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, unless, and there's different interpretations of that. Some just want to have access to the entire piece of land. Not all of them have. Not all people who say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, have genocidal aspirations, right? We often
not
assume the worst.
Germans that said that.
But we do need to understand.
Jews should be killed.
We do need to understand that quote is not inherently genocidal. Some might be genocidal. Some might want to dismantle Israel.
Bro, these people read the protocols, the elders of Zion. They think Hitler's a hero. Yes, we could pull away the river to the sea, but in practical terms, what it means in practical terms is us gone. That's what it means.
Okay.
In practical terms, yes, there's some of them that would be okay with Jews living here.
Mordechai, that's the less important point. Throwing money at the situation, like you said, right? Paying somebody and then getting them to be at peace with you probably isn't enough. I agree, because there's honor. But the idea that crushing their honor through making them more miserable and humiliating them more will somehow change their honor system. No, it's the honor. I agree there's honor. The Palestinian honor is, I would say the conflict would be much easier to solve if there wasn't that strong Middle Eastern honor amongst Palestinian society. I agree with you. But the idea that being aggressive is going to weaken the honor, I think it's the exact opposite. I think a lot of the honor they have is not because of 1948. That plays into it. But no, it's the honor of needing to wait at checkpoints today. It's getting their homes searched. It's losing more and more land over time. The honor is growing stronger because they're humiliated on a daily basis.
Well, I'm listening. I'm not gonna have to. I don't have to respond right away. I'm absorbing what you're saying.
I had one more small point that I don't remember. I'll pull up the super
Go
chat in the
on.
meantime. Except African, Arab land, Libya, and Syria all have 24 hours. This is not the first time Mordechai gave false information. Well, thanks, Shai, and thanks for the 15 shekels. Well, feel free to fact check anything we say.
I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah.
It was something
I wanted to
said, I'm
continue
not
my
sure.
point. I wanted to continue my point. Palestinians have honor, sure. This is a reality we need to accept. And again, honor is not inherently bad. We could view it as bad because it makes it harder for us to have peace, let's say, but there are things that we can do for Palestinians to accept us on this land. And I agree, throwing money at the situation.
Like what? Like
isn't
what should?
enough.
What do you think we should do?
We could acknowledge wrongdoing.
Give me an example of something we should acknowledge, like Deir Yassin, which we didn't even do.
Yeah, or
the blood libel.
No, look, we ethnically cleansed a few 100,000 Palestinians. We could start to let Palestinian refugees return to the land. We could let them fly Palestinian flags. Like but here's the thing:
Palestinian flags all the time.
Not in Israel, but again, here's the thing.
In Israel.
Hold on.
Okay, so
hold on. Wait. I just want to say something.
Syria.
I realize that this is not a point that's going to convince you, right? Because again, this you will all see as forms of weakness, right? All these are concessions that's going to give them hope and make them more violent. That's what you think. I understand this isn't going to convince you, but I actually think
let's go through the things you just mentioned.
Hold on. Wait. I just want to build. I want to build a bigger plan, like a bigger vision. Okay. Because I agree, honor, it's connected to honor. If Palestinians feel like there is a massive effort to improve their lives by what I mentioned earlier, the civilian force in the West Bank, a national apology, beginning to let refugees return. Again, that doesn't mean 1 million in a year. We need sane immigration policy. I understand our demographic concern. I'm not talking about that, but a beginning to that. A dedication to peacefully resolving the conflict. Helping to fund certain schools and infrastructure in the West Bank. Have it come with the full package, right? That really improves their lives. And the idea that if there's violence, that's not rooted out by the PA. And again, if we make a bunch of concessions, which you view as weakness, we could get the support of the international community to pressure the PA and even Hamas to change their tune. If we're going to make concessions, we don't do it unilaterally. We do it part of a greater move to create peace on the land. We do it with the international community. We do it with the PA. There's a way where you solve the honor issue, drastically change the environment of the Palestinians, and get them to understand that peace here with Israel is in their best interest. Okay, like so I even view it as almost like a lack of creativity to think that it's impossible, like that we're just destined to violence with one another. And let me just hold on. Let me just put it another way. Do you think you believe in God? I'm more agnostic, but let's say there's an all-knowing being that came down. Do you think that an all-knowing being could present a path that it's within the realm of possible to create a path to peaceful coexistence without being more violent? An all-knowing being, do you think they would possess that ability? Meaning that the path is possible.
I think that you're looking at God in a functional way and not...
Well, it doesn't need to be God. It could be an artificial intelligence that just knows everything, right?
Okay, I'll say this, that with chokhmah and with wisdom, I'm sure that there are things we could have done from 48 until now that would have improved life for everyone, that would have minimized the conflict, and maybe even like eliminated it completely. It could be there's a series of steps that we can't fathom, that had we done those things, there would have been no conflict. Okay? It could be.
But do you think today?
And there could be today things, the same thing today. There could be a series of things that we can do. And I have some ideas myself
of what
those things are.
But let's do that.
We're going to get to that. But I think that, and this is why we're having this dialogue, because you are approaching this in good faith, and you're not a self-hating Jew or any of that kind of thing. You're not one of those leftists, so we can have this conversation. So I agree that we should be creative and we should look for a solution. But I'd like to push back on one of the things you said at the beginning of your point, right? That we should acknowledge wrongdoing, acknowledge ethnic cleansing. No, I don't think we're guilty of ethnic cleansing. I think by conceding that point, it's untrue, and it does damage to our whole.
Wait, what do you mean? You don't think?
I don't think we ethnically cleansed them. Nope. I think that we had a conflict that was not cleanly along ethnic lines, right? Because we Jews, we were made up of several different ethnicities.
No, but we're a meta ethnicity. But that's just semantics.
Let's put the Jewish thing aside. There were Arab villages that signed non-aggression treaties with us, like Abu Ghosh, all right, and others.
Yeah.
Many of them vote Likud, right? Why? They signed non-aggression treaties with us in 1948. And because they figured out that we may win, or they were just nice guys, whatever the reason was. They decided not to get involved in the conflict. Not only did we not kick them out, but we gave them a lot of land. We gave them they have all the rights and very little of the responsibilities that Israeli citizens have. They don't need to serve in the military. They get away with paying less taxes. They're better in universities. They're outperforming Israelis because they get that head start, right? And 20% of our population are basically Arabs who we've allowed to stay. So if it was ethnic cleansing, we could have kicked them all out, but we didn't. Whereas the Palestinian territories have zero Jews. And I'm not just talking about Palestinian territories of 67. I'm talking about like Jordan, right? When Jordan took over East Jerusalem, they kicked everybody out. There was not one Jew left, right? Egypt made sure no Jews are left in Gaza. I don't need to Hebron, the West Bank. Oh, we were completely ethnically cleansed from any area, which, by the way, goes back to my point, showing us where this is going. When they get area, they ethnically cleanse it. When we get some area, we give them citizenship, we make a deal, we give them residency, we try to get along with them. So the guys, those, for the most part, yes, it was a war and there may have been atrocities as well, but for the most part, the Arabs that got kicked out were Arabs that were in conflict with us, and that conflict was openly stated genocidal goals. That's what they said they wanted to do. So we cleansed those people who said they're going to throw us in the sea, kill us, and finish the job that Mansour Hitler did. Right. So I don't feel guilty for the Nakba. I'm sorry. Everybody says Nakba, we have to feel bad. No. All right. You started a war. You stated in advance, verbally, you said what you want out of the war. What do you want? You're going to, at best, ethnically cleanse us, at worst, genocide us. You lost the war, and those people that partook in the war against us got cleansed, not apologizing for that. All right? In fact, you cleansed Jews who were not even Zionists. Jews in Syria and in Iraq were not part of the conflict. They did not wave Israeli flags. They didn't bother anyone. They were cleansed from those countries. There were pogroms. They were not protected. And they ended up coming to Israel and getting citizenship, right? Israel's population doubled from that. So I have to push back on that because this is where you and I disagree. I'm willing to accept like that maybe at some point in the 73 war and the 67 war, some Israeli kid, killed some POWs against the Geneva Convention. I think that may have happened. It's not good. Yeah, but we're living in a world where Syrians. I don't want to get into that. It's a tangent. But so I'm pushing back on the thing of ethnic cleansing. We're not guilty of ethnic cleansing. We're not guilty of treating the Palestinians any worse than they treated us or they planned to treat us. This is a pretty reasonable result of the kind of conflict that we were locked into. And if we want to make peace, I'm willing to consider peace. I'm very much willing even to have territorial compromise. But I need to be convinced that the conflict will come to an end, and any territorial compromise we make is not just a stepping stone to our eventual destruction and annihilation. That's all it is. Now, I agree with you that it's not hopeless. I agree with you that at some point that's probably what's going to happen. I can see that point. But we're not there right now. And I don't think, and as sad as this makes you, and it even makes me sad, I don't think there's much we can do to change that other than destroying their hope. Destroying their hope of wiping us out. That's if you do that, they're going to become more reasonable. By the way, it works like that even on an individual level, right? You see that the amount of human rights violations that Israel gets hit with is much higher than China, than Syria, Cuba, and we're not. And I know this is a Hezbollah talking point, but why do you think they're not going after Assad? Why they're not going after Iran the way they're going after us? Iran just got suspended from like the Human Rights Council because they didn't pay their dues. That's why they got suspended, because they didn't pay their dues. Like, no one is saying, "Oh, why are you hanging gays? Like, why are you jailing women for not covering their ear?" Because they know there's no one to talk to. Because Iran is tough. All right. I'm not saying we should jail women for not covering their hair, obviously, or that we should hang gays, God forbid, or any of that. But what I'm saying is, it's like, think of the UN. This is another difference between you and I. I see the UN as a ganenet, as this kindergarten teacher, and she's tired, and she had a long day, and she hates her job. She wishes she took that course in accounting. She doesn't want to be like dealing with diapers all day and wiping kids' butts. And now kids are fighting in the kindergarten. Whose side is she going to take? She's always going to take the aggressive kid because he's the hardest to deal with, and she's going to acquiesce to him. And the good kid is going to get screwed. That's how most kindergartens, government-run kindergartens are, unfortunately. And the UN works the same way. They're going after Israel because we're kind of like you. We want to be Europe when we grow up, right? Israel, in many ways, is the reasonable person in the room that you can talk to, whereas the Palestinians, the Syrians, the Iraqis, there's no one to talk to.
Yeah, I don't think Israel is anything like me, but I hear you. I want to go back to the Nakba, and then we could get back to this point.
All right.
You made the claim that we didn't ethnically cleanse Palestinians, but then you explained what we did do, and that is still ethnically cleanse them.
How?
So essentially, well, by definition, it's ethnically cleansing. But essentially what you're saying?
It's not based on ethnicity. It's based on conflict. You're fighting us, you get kicked out. You don't fight us, you don't get kicked out. Whatever.
Yeah. Wait.
It wasn't based on ethnicity. It was based on their sides in the conflict. Like
women and children. We didn't just kick out militants. We took full villages. Wait, hold on.
We cleansed the village.
We took full villages and made them leave. Okay. Yes. We made a few exceptions based on who we thought would be peaceful.
Alliances.
So we made what?
Based on alliances.
Yeah, that's fine. But ethnic cleansing doesn't mean you need to ethnically cleanse an entire population. What Israel? Wait, hold on.
My definition of ethnic cleansing is
kicking people out based on their ethnicity. It's not your definition, though. There's a definition that we need to go by.
What is the definition you want to go by?
Let's look it up. We could read it. I mean, it probably has a longer legal definition, but ethnic cleansing is the systemic forced removal or extermination of ethnic, racial, and or religious groups from a given area, often with the intent of making a region ethnically homogeneous. Okay? So
that's not what we did.
No, yes, it is. It's true we left some. All Israel needed was for Israel to be a Jewish state, and we knew this prior to 48. Okay? We knew this prior to 48. That we need a demographic majority. We knew that we could not have a Jewish land if we are the minority. It's true that we did ethnically cleanse the Palestinians as a result of them attacking us after 48. So what I would accept as a more reasonable argument is saying we did ethnically cleanse the Palestinian, but given the situation we're in, it was for the great good. I'd accept that argument.
That's not what I'm saying. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I would accept that as a more legit argument because it just seems not.
Even according to the definition you said, it's true that one of the challenges facing the Zionist movement was a demographic challenge. That's true. Okay. Now, that being said, there was a wide variety of views within the Zionist movement of what to do about this challenge. It ranged from let's just have a binational state, which was a very large number, let's not declare a state at all, to let's kick them out and declare a state, right? Now, the people that ran the yishuv were, for the most part, socialist leftists who were not. Ben Gurion's plan was not to kick everyone out. It was not Irgun, which I'm actually more to the right of. I'm probably more on the Irgun side, but let's to be for argument's sake. But to be fair, but the leadership of the yishuv was not like that. When war was declared in the yishuv, right, under the conditions that it was declared, okay, that created a certain reality. We were attacked by the entire Arab world, who charged in on us, and the local Arabs, many of those villages, joined in that conflict. They were not kicked out because of their religion or because of their ethnicity. They were kicked out because they were part of a conflict. And why were the women and children kicked out? Because when you kick out all the men, their families go with them. It wasn't like the women and children said, please let
Mordechai, ethnic cleansing is often related to a conflict. It's not just, hey, we don't like the way you look, leave.
Ethnic cleansing is when a nation is trying to strengthen its demographic balance, and in order to do that, they stop cleansing certain ethnicities out. That's not what happened.
But why?
We declared a state. We made an announcement. We said, "Here, Israel is a state." Not only that, in the Israel's Declaration of Independence, Arabs equality, women equality, gender equality, everything equal. That was our official statement. The Arabs made a counter statement. F you guys, we're going to throw you into the sea and kill you all. Local Arabs who we just declared, whether it was sincere or not, we declared we're going to get legally, and we put it in our foundational documents. We're going to give you guys equality. What did they say? F you, we're going to kick you out as well. And they joined in the war. They got kicked out for joining in the war. They didn't get kicked out for speaking Arabic. That's why I'm pushing back on it. I'm not going to concede this point because yes, there was a conflict, but the reason they were kicked out was not their ethnicity. The reason they were kicked out was because they were part, for the most part, because they were part of the attacking force.
The fact that we got attacked gave us a very good justification for ethnically cleansing them. We needed a demographic majority. Do you think we would have accepted a demographic minority?
We did, for the most part. There was a minority of Jews. Like
but the second we had a justification, we took advantage of it and kicked hundreds of thousands of Palestinians out of their homes. Somebody wrote in the comments, some fled, some left on their own. That's true, some amount, but a few 100,000 were ethnically cleansed.
Okay,
so and wait, I want to make one last point again. I don't want us to get too stuck on a semantic argument.
I don't think it's semantic. I think that. But wait, I think that you're doing great damage to your cause, even not only because if you want us, Israelis, Jews, brothers of you, to take seriously your attempts to say, you can accuse us of what's today considered the worst crime possible when we're not guilty of it.
No, genocide is far worse.
Yeah, genocide is far worse, but yeah.
I would say that doing this allows us to be honest and have more impact on the conversation. People who hate Israel, they just throw out terms: genocide, occupation, apartheid, ethnic cleansing. Yeah, I would say the one that has zero basis at all is genocide. But what many Israelis do, we get defensive over everything. There's no occupation, it's our land. What do you mean apartheid? They're not citizens. What do you mean ethnic cleansing? We were in war. We get defensive over everything. We have people who don't acknowledge Israel's wrongdoings of the past don't have any legitimacy to actually have a conversation. You can't even honestly say there was no genocide and have people believe you. When I say there wasn't genocide, people will be like, okay, you know what? I think I'm going to trust Adar because he has no problem acknowledging his country's troubling history.
As soon as you turn on them, they're going to be, because he's Israeli, that's why he doesn't agree. If he would have been Arab, he would have admitted to the truth. He's only willing to concede this much. He's not willing to concede anymore. Are you reading the text that I just posted?
Yeah, you want me to read this out loud?
This isn't one example. I can give hundreds of these, but I happen to have.
I want to come with why I think we shouldn't be ashamed. Well, maybe we could be ashamed.
Not ashamed. Let's be truthful. Let's be truthful.
Yeah,
let's look for the truth. Listen, you know what? I'll be even more honest with you, okay? If in order to secure the safety of my people and the security of the state of Israel, I need to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians, I would ethnically cleanse the Eskimos, the Swedes, and the Palestinians tomorrow, if that would save my people, okay? But I don't think we did, all right? I'm the most right-wing guy in this space. So I'm willing to concede. I personally don't think ethnic cleansing is the end of the world in real moral terms. I think the world today considers it really bad, but I think under certain circumstances, it's understandable. There's exchange of populations all the time. We got ethnically cleansed from the Arab countries. Did we complain? No, we rebuilt our lives and are living our best lives. Ad hayom hazeh. Okay, but I don't think we did it. And I think that by conceding this point, we're giving weapons in the hands of our enemies, and that's why I'm resisting it.
So I actually view the acknowledgement of ethnic cleansing to be an important part of reconciliation. I don't think it's a tool. I think the Nakba is so much a part of the Palestinian narrative, and it's so important to them. And when we deny it, all that does, the way it feels to them when we deny Nakba is similar to how we feel when people deny the Holocaust. Right? Think about how that feels, and you've debated Holocaust deniers, how that feels when people debate Holocaust. That's what they feel when we deny Nakba. To think that there's more to gain by denying it than in acknowledging it and using that as a tool for reconciliation, I mean, I just, you know.
So here's the point I'll concede. I'll concede this point.
Wait, I just want to say, okay. If you'll concede, you can speak.
Finish your point. Fine. No, finish your point. No, finish
well, no,
your point.
It's just
this is the backhanded conceding.
No, because okay, we could get into semantics. Well, technically, you know, it was a transfer of our enemies and this and that, but the reality is Israel needed a demographic majority. Many of the early Zionists were not shy in their aspiration to take more land once the opportunity arose. Ben-Gurion also shared this aspiration. The whole idea that we're just going to take that tiny sliver of land and keep that, very few Zionists actually acknowledge that this is going to be the land. We wanted the entire land. We used Palestinian violence as a justification to get what we felt like was ours. We needed a demographic majority on that land. Ethnic cleansing was very convenient for us. We could try to get into a semantic, technically it's this, technically it's that. I personally think we have so much more to gain from acknowledging it, because the harm and the how inflammatory it is to try to deny does nothing but push Palestinians away from us and further fuel the radicalization rather than working to bring them closer.
Okay, so I'm going to concede the following point to you sincerely, okay? The Nakba is real. It's a catastrophe. The Palestinians suffered a horrific catastrophe of exile, right? As a Jew, okay, it would be presumptuous, it would be disingenuous of me to pretend that didn't happen, okay? Accept it. However, why did it happen? What were the things that caused it to happen, and to what extent are we responsible? There is an extent that we are responsible, and we need to own that. Yes, I will agree that there were some villages that were pretty peaceful, and they, in the heat of the moment, in the drama of the war, and in Ben-Gurion's like clever, sly thinking, there may have been some villages that were kicked out that weren't exactly on the side of the enemy, right? I'm not gonna say that every single Palestinian that was kicked out deserved it. I'm gonna concede that point. However, I just posted some quotes in the chat, which I'm gonna read, I have hundreds. I'm just gonna read two because time, right? 1958, Nuri Saeed. This is when the Arabs were more on, Prime Minister of Iraq, right? We will smash the country with our guns and obliterate every place the Jews seek shelter in. The Arabs should conduct their wives and children to safe areas until the fighting has died down. Okay, this is a common sentiment at the time. So even though it went both ways, this is one quote. There's many others. For example, Edward Atiyah, Secretary of the Arab League in London, the wholesale exodus was due partly to the belief of the Arabs, encouraged by the boasting of an unrealistic Arabic press of irresponsible utterances of some of the Arab leaders, that it could only be a matter of weeks before the Jews were defeated by the armies of the Arab states and the Palestinian Arabs and able to re-enter and retake possession of their country. So I know that it's a Hasbara talking point, but it's also true that a large part of this Nakba what made the catastrophe so painful and really heart-wrenching was that these people were their brothers. These Arab states were so much the brothers of the Palestinians, they were willing to risk life and limb to go, and their morality, to go wipe out Holocaust survivors, emaciated people who were not really they thought were not in a position for war, and they were willing to commit genocide on them to save the Palestinians and to risk their lives doing so. They were brothers in order to kick us out and wipe us out, but they weren't brothers enough to absorb them and give them citizenship. That's the true Nakba. The Nakba is that the Palestinians were used as a tool by this pan-Arab collective force, a tool of hatred, a battering ram to destroy us with, and they were never given a chance to live as actual human beings, as true people. Okay, and this Palestinian identity that was developed over the next 50 years from 48 and on, which was I'm not saying that they don't have an identity that's legitimate, but I'm saying the identity that was developed, it was programmed to be mutually exclusive with ours. Their claims were also programmed to be mutually exclusive with our claim. Whatever our claim is, theirs is going to be the opposite. And therefore, I think that, go back to my previous statement, I'm sorry, I'm not convinced yet that we have what to give them. That's my point. My point is not that nothing happened, there was no Nakba. Yes, there was a Nakba. Yes, we had a part in it, but we were the minority because we defended ourselves. Did we benefit from Arab stupidity and Arab losses? We did benefit from it. Did we benefit from Arab stupidity in 67? We did. But that doesn't mean that we caused it, and it doesn't mean that we have to have Jewish guilt for it. We're allowed to win as well. When we win, we're allowed to be happy, especially when we didn't start the fire. All right, and that's just my response to that. And yes, we should understand their pain, but also understand to what extent we're responsible and to what extent we aren't.
So I want to just push back on a certain point. There's a few points there. I do want us to, there's a few more questions that I want to read, and I want us to also be able to share final thoughts. But the concept of Jewish guilt, I want to tell you something. I don't feel guilty. I don't feel guilty for what we did in the past, and I don't feel guilty for what we're doing today because it's not in my control. So I don't think framing it as Jewish guilt is the right way to look at it. I feel guilty when I personally do something to harm someone or contribute to harming somebody. As long as I know that, what?
I feel guilty when I eat a burger.
How would you feel if it had cheese on it?
Oh, don't even say that. Never even had that.
No. I don't think I don't want individuals to feel guilty. I want us to take collective responsibility. I want us to understand that us living on this land in peace does not need to come at the expense of another group of people. And that if we create the right environment, then peace on this land can very well be a reality. So it's not about feeling guilty. And acknowledging wrongdoings of the past, again, is not saying I am responsible, but acknowledging that what we did harmed another group of people. And in acknowledging so, it could aid in the reconciliation process. Seems like a good move to me. I do agree with you that the Nakba is weaponized by other Arab countries. Why have they not been made citizens? The fact that Palestinians are still refugees, it's so
why are they refugees in Jordan or in Syria? Why is Assad not?
I do agree to an extent that is used as a weapon to continue to fight us.
But three wars against us for these people.
But at the same time, we returned after 2,000 years. The fact that they still want to return after 70, I don't find that so surprising.
I don't find it surprising.
It just shows that they're not so different from us after all. They want to return to the land that they consider their home. I do want to I do want to. We had one more super chat. Shai Levi goes, "What 1958 has to do with the Nakba?" But yeah, one of the quotes you read was 1958. Thanks for another super chat, Shai.
It's the same attitude. I have 10 other quotes of that from before 48.
Okay.
I'll post some of them. You can post it in the chat, in the group.
Cool. So now we had a few questions people asked on the Sulha BBS. BBS is
BDS?
No, BBS stands for Bulletin Board System. Whoever's like, I guess in their mid 30s and above might remember it. I personally don't. I'm in my low 30s, but it was before the internet. There was this concept of connected bulletin boards. So this BBS is based off that concept, but it's kind of like Reddit, but built on blockchain technology. You get rewarded for creating content, even for just joining. So we have one for Sulha, and people ask their questions. So the people who ask questions there will get asked. I just shared it in the chat. Join our BBS. We're growing it. It's going to be cool. Anyways, so this was asked by JW. And let's try to get fairly concise responses. These questions are for you, I believe. Fairly concise, just because we're going on 2 hours, and we'll try to take.
Are you in a rush? You got going?
No. I could keep going.
I skipped Shmirah tonight. I canceled. I was supposed to do guard duty. I canceled it, so I can do this. So. Oh,
you do guard duty on your yeshuv?
On the farm, yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. Do you think there is merit in the Palestinian narrative? And if so, is there a point in which it stops having merit?
I think that the Palestinians have a legitimate claim. Right? I don't think their claim is illegitimate. I don't judge them morally. I'm not one of these guys like, it's terrorism. No, they're in a conflict. They made choices. They made collective choices. And a lot of the things that they're going through are a result of those choices. And what I mean is, expand just a little bit. Like now with Gaza, right? Palestinians voted for Hamas. They know what Hamas is about. They decide if they want to negotiate and get to their goals through negotiation, or they want to go through war. There's pluses and minuses to both sides. I don't look at international conflicts and ethnic conflicts in a moral way. That's the honest truth. I don't see them morally. Yes, there's a limit. Obviously, genocide is bad, but at the end of the day, two groups of people fighting over territory. It's been going on since before we were human, since we were Cro-Magnons, right? And I'm on one side, they're on the other side. It is what it is. Yeah, there's merit. Yeah, they were here. They're also indigenous, all right? They have a right to make a claim here. And it would be great if we can live together. But the conflict as it is right now is mutually exclusive. If I got so much as a hint that they're willing to live with me in peace, I would reach out to them in love and brotherhood. But I think if I read their language, the words they say, and I read their body language, and I read their educational materials, and I hear what they say in their mosques, I don't think that there's anywhere to meet in the middle. That's what I'm here to say. As soon as that changes, I'll be with Adar.
I appreciate that answer. And to one of our common community, our most long-lasting and most extreme community members, who's become a meme star hopper, he mentioned a few times how much he loves you. So I hope he heard this response of yours as well, because if he could adopt this from you, then you'd have left here impacting somebody who's quite extreme. Anyways, another question from JW. He asked 3 questions. If you were a young Palestinian man, do you think there would be a chance that you would be sympathetic to terrorism or be involved in it yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a chance, yeah.
And most, if not involved ourselves, definitely sympathetic.
Yeah. Look, I'm sympathetic to Irgun and Lehi. I think they were right. Okay. And people consider them terrorists. I don't judge my view, and I don't speak for all other settlers, and I don't speak for all, I just speak for myself. I don't view these things from a moral perspective. I look at them militarily, scientifically, genetically, and it's just conflict of two people. It's a tragic conflict between two people. There's just not, right now, there's no middle ground that I can see that makes sense for me to agree to. But I sympathize with them. I don't hate them. It's not personal. It's business, but it's not personal. I don't have personal animus for any, even for the worst of my enemies. I understand where they come from.
Third, if Israel withdrew from the West Bank and gave it to Palestine, would you prefer to stay and to have Palestinian citizenship, or would you come back to Israel proper?
I love my farm. I love the land, right? It's tough, salty, Judean land. I don't want to leave it. If I can get along with I believe that if that ever happened, I think I would get along with the Palestinian Authority just fine. If not, then we'll see. Either I'll have to fight for my farm or I'll have to leave. I don't know. But I would try to stay.
Cool.
I would try to stay.
We have one more BBS question. We have Ari the Hebrew. You said you asked something on BBS. I'm not seeing your question, so maybe repost it. This is from Ehud Ben Gera.
Ehud Ben Gera.
You know them?
It's a biblical figure, my friend.
Oh, okay.
An important biblical figure, right?
Shows how much I know. Okay. Would you accept?
I invited you to my Tanakh class. You never showed up.
I'll come one of these days. I'll come. Would you accept a one-state solution with a Yehudi state? By that I mean Jewish in the wide sense of the word, including Arabs of Jewish ancestry and Arabs in general who are willing to live in a state that puts Judean Israelite history and Judaism in the cultural priority. I think we know the answer to that.
It sounds good.
You pretty much endorsed that already. Okay. I want us to just give final thoughts on what we've discussed up until here, and then we could do a few more audience questions. Maybe we could even let people in the chat join if they want. Ari the Hebrew is Ehud. Okay, cool. I guess I'll go first so you can have the final word. First of all, I thought this has been a great conversation.
I always find conversations with you inspiring. Or really, you come from a very pure place.
Thank you.
I'm saying this unironically.
I appreciate that. And we could certainly do this again once we have time to think and reflect on the new topics that came up. But it seems like the biggest difference between us really comes down to approach. What approach we think needs to be taken to solve the Israel-Palestine conflict. For me, it doesn't make any sense, not morally or even practically speaking, to endorse a solution that will cause more harm when we have many options that will cause less harm. I think we have immense control over the land from the river to the sea. I think we have international influence to further control the land from the river to the sea and impact certain geopolitical forces in the region, that our lack of creativity and our quick endorsement of militarism, the continuation of a brutal military occupation that really does cause the Palestinians immense harm. I think we have a moral obligation to do better. I think we could do much better. I think we could create an environment where peacemakers are born. We are products of our environment. Again, a Palestinian born in a Jewish family or adopted by a Jewish family will not grow up hating Jews. And a Jew who grows up in a Palestinian family will not grow up hating Palestinians. Our environment determines who we are to a very large extent. Not only, as I mentioned, do we have a moral obligation, but what I'm suggesting by making the land more peaceful, again, is not only moral, but I view it as strategic. Because again, a more peaceful environment, the more hope people have, the less desperate people are. It seems like they will become less violent and less aggressive. And this is the path we should take. And any path that supports violence or aggression or causing harm to another group of people should always, always, always be the absolute last resort and not the first resort, which is common in the country we live in. We often view violence as the go-to. There's even probably an evolutionary basis for why we do this. We don't live in the world of our ancestors. We have immense means to change environment, to negotiate, and this is the path forward. And again, thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me on, by the way. It was fun to hash out these views in public as we do between us. It's good. I agree that, again, I think that your moral stance, your moral drive is commendable, and I admire it unironically, as I said before. However, to me, the key of morality, the most moral thing one can do, is to look out for his family first, for his children, his wife, for his extended family, for his tribe. And then as you branch out, you become more global. But your first priority, I know that you're more of a globalist and I'm more of a nationalist. And that's kind of part of where we disagree. But I think even as a globalist, all right, even if I were to concede that globalism is or like a global view is some sort of utopian thing in the future, even if that were the case, still you prioritize your people before others, right? That's just natural, and that's, I think, is the key. I don't think that us in Israel today, we see violence as a go-to option. I think we've been put in a position where we had to resort to violence when we didn't want to. We were not good at it. We don't have a military history for thousands of years. We didn't have it. We were kind of put into a position where militarism and fighting had to become such an integral part of our existence. And I think that I do believe that one day that can change. I think that there's not much we can do now other than stand our ground. All right. Anything we can do to ease the pressure on the civilian population of our opponents should be done, for sure. Not at the expense of our security, but yes, whatever. If there's anything else that can be done, civil administration and things like that, I would be for that. I'm not going to say that. That's something we can agree on. And I would keep my eyes peeled. Yes, as soon as I saw the tiniest glimmer of hope that what we call the Palestinian people are willing to live at peace with the existence of a Jewish state, and their goal is not our complete annihilation at worst, or our ethnic cleansing at best, I would be completely on your side. I'm just not convinced that that's the case, and I'm not convinced that it's something we can do. I don't know if my closing statement is too long, but regarding what you said about like nature and nurture, and like we're all a product of our environment, to an extent. But I think that we do live in the Middle East, and I think evolution, as much as you see all these books and things, I still believe that evolution is real. And I think that humans are biologically and physiologically diverse, all right? And I think that here in the Middle East, people are very, very tribal. And we know that, right? Like George Bush thought or convinced people that he can bring democracy to the Middle East if he just came to Iraq and unpacked this magic box of democracy. The Iraqis are going to love it so much, it's just going to be a constitutional democracy. It didn't work because people over here are tribal. People here have very strong family connections. They have very strong loves and very strong hatreds. Being tribal is not just a bad thing. People knock it, but it's also very beautiful. I live among tribal people, right? And in a village, Arabs, Palestinians, if somebody's sick, the whole village pitches in, the whole tribe helps him out, right? They'll support him when he's down until he gets back up, and then when someone else is down, he supports them. They protect each other. But the downside is that the feuds last for a long time. We're not going to end the tribal feud by being nice at this point. We don't have, we're not going to end their claim. I don't think we have what their claim is right now, their honor, what they perceive as their honor, which is that this land was taken from them. I don't think that we have what to give them at this point. I do believe it can change, but I don't believe it's going. I don't see it changing yet. All right. I pray for a day where this is over, just like all other Jews. I don't particularly enjoy being in a state of conflict, and I pray for the day when you'll be right in this argument. All right. But as of now, I am not yet convinced. Maybe we'll do this another time, and I'll be more convinced. But I don't think that we're there yet. You know, and I think that by prematurely putting ourselves there, we're actually pushing peace away, because it reignites the conflict by, again, giving hope to terrorism. Terrorism thrives not on desperation, but on hope. And when you give them hope, that's when they're inspired. And that's just what I have to say. Thanks for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. The concept of terrorism. What's the quote you just finished with? Terrorism.
I just made it up. Yeah.
No, I know. Say that again.
I think terrorism is born of hope and not of desperation.
Right. Okay.
I think people that drive terror, they're not doing it because they think they have no other choice and they're going to die anyway. No, if they're dying anyway, they're going to be depressed. They're going to be on drugs. I think that what the reason they're willing to die for their cause is because they think that their death contributes to the end goal. They think that's how they're going to defeat their enemy.
Yeah, so
they believe
this
it's a million
really,
shaheeds to Jerusalem. It's not a million shaheeds.
This was
heaven.
really.
It's a million shaheeds because that's going to bring them to Jerusalem.
This was the new territory that I'll need to think more on, but I definitely, and there might be some data on this, but it does not seem like hope is what is
it's counterintuitive, but that's what I think. Okay, that's what I believe. That's a feeling I have from speaking to terrorists, right? From speaking to people who support terror. From speaking to our enemies, we're online.
You know what I think drives terrorism more than anything. Not more than anything. I think we could really look at a few different things. And let's agree that we're not going back to old points just because we've done it. Like let's hit new territory. We'll take some more questions, but I think that a lot of the motivation to be a Palestinian terrorist, one, if you think that you are going to go to heaven and get virgins, let's not underestimate men's sexual drive, especially in a sexually repressed society. If I lived in a world where I wasn't allowed to have sex with multiple women, I'd consider, and I believe that actually get him in heaven, I'd consider doing that without a doubt. That's one. And I really think we do underestimate the whole virgins in heaven. Like, we know men do stupid shit for. Am I allowed to say pussy on air? Anyways, we know men do stupid shit. Okay. Another one is legacy. We know that people would kill and die and dedicate their lives just for their legacy. So it's true, Palestinian society, if you die a martyr, that is your legacy. You can get a street named after yourself. If you live a shitty life and you're like, let me just get out of it, even if you don't believe in heaven, but you'll be remembered, that still might be a good trade-off. What I think is a far less motivator is, let me do it because my contribution will be to the freeing of Jerusalem, which I myself won't get to experience. Let me ask you this. If the Palestinian that was a martyr was not remembered as a martyr, right, would they still do it? And the reason I ask this is because legacy, I think, is so much more of a motivating factor than the actual end result that they won't be alive to experience.
I can't judge for Palestinians, but I can judge for myself. What are those values that I'm willing to die for, right? Okay, I think that in many ways I think like the Arabs. Okay, I understand them. I understand where they're coming from, right? What are you willing to die for, Adar? Is there something out there that you're willing to lay down your life for?
Yeah, I would die to save family members, or I would die to save a baby. I would die to save
You don't
multiple
know the
people.
baby. You would die for the baby. You don't have no idea who this baby is.
If it was in a not a truly anonymous case, then no. But if there's a situation where, let's say, there was like a truck about to run over a baby, and me running into the street and saving it, like I feel like my instinct at that moment would be to save the baby. And there's an evolutionary.
I understand, but what would be the cause? But not that. I mean, like, what is a cause that you're willing to lay your life down for? Not a baby, a family member, like some love of a personal thing that like gets in your like. Your guts. I'm talking about like a cause, like an ideological cause. Is there? Maybe there isn't. Is there an ideological cause that you're willing to lay your life down for?
Well, I served in the IDF, so I think we could conclude that I would die to protect my country. But
like if Iran attacked us, right? And your unit had to go into war, and you know that you're probably
I would do that.
You'd be okay dying for this cause.
Yeah,
right?
but I wouldn't serve in the West Bank, and I wouldn't go to Gaza, because those I don't view those aren't existential threats. I don't think that our conduct there is.
But you're
moral,
willing to die. All right, but you're willing to die to protect your country from being attacked by a foreign enemy.
When I was younger, yeah. Now my thought process is probably that I have more to contribute. I'm not a good combat soldier. Like there's,
no, I understand.
You know, but you understand, I'm trying to be as honest as possible. Yeah, I served in the IDF. I served in the IDF knowing I could be called to war and I might die, and I lost friends, right? So yeah, that was definitely a cause I was willing to die for. Now, in the position I am today at life, at 31 years old, I feel like I do have a greater contribution doing what I'm doing on YouTube than being on a battlefield. So I would probably say
you do contribute a lot. Yeah. Okay.
So I would say today probably not.
Okay, but the only reason you're not going to die is because you believe that what you're doing here right now is contributing more to your nation.
Yeah.
Right.
I would also die to solve the conflict.
No, but okay, that's easy. Like, here's your death would solve the conflict. I don't mean that kind of thing. I mean, is there a cause, a great war, or a great conflict that you're willing to go down in a fiery blaze of glory, right? In order to bring that goal closer. I think all men have that at something. You say you'll die to solve a conflict.
I think I've taken enough psychedelics that I'm past that. But yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it was definitely a big part of me for most of my life, for sure.
Okay, so let's go. So back to your question, like about Palestinians, right? What would I die for? Yeah, if obviously my family, my children, I would die for them. But let's say my country is being attacked, and my unit is called up in Miluim. If I know I'm gonna die doing something, I may chicken out like in real time because I'm older now and I have children. I'm not saying I'm that brave, but at least to be honest, like ideologically, I believe that would be a worthy way of dying. I wouldn't be afraid of dying that way, right? Now, I read about Menachem Begin and like Etzel, right, and Lehi before the state was established. So here you got these people. They don't forget, like all these revisionist Zionists. They look at the world. The way the world they saw was that Hitler is going to wipe out the Jews any day. They didn't think of Hitler, but they thought that the Jews ran out of time in Europe, and they believed that a catastrophe is going to happen. The ultimate Nakba is going to happen. So they were willing to die and subject themselves to horrific torture, and they're willing to do horrific things to the British in order to bring more Jewish immigration, because they believed, right, and they happen to have been right, that the more Jewish immigration we have, the less Jews will die, right? So I identify with that. I think that I would have been, I like to believe that I would have been a Irgun guy, and I would have been out there I would be willing to die fighting the British in order to open up Palestine to Jewish immigration. I think I would have.
Wait, but let me ask you this. If you knew you would die and it wouldn't change how you're judged by God after your death, it has no effect. It has no effect on that, and no one would remember your name. You wouldn't go down, and no one would know you died for the cause. Would you still do it?
So I think so, because it's not about God, and it's not about my name. Even though it would be nice to be judged favorably by God, and it would be great to have my name on the street, but I'm dead, so who really cares? To me, it's the fact that I look at myself as part of a greater whole. I look at myself as part of this glorious nation of Am Yisrael, and I love my nation like more than anything, really. And I look at it and I say, if I can contribute my body, right, I can contribute my blood, right, to advance the cause of this nation and to improve their safety, that's enough reward for me. I would do that if I was an atheist. I think I would do that if no one would remember my name. And I believe that. And
I hear you.
I believe that Palestinians also. That's why you have like the original terrorists were communists, like PFLP guys. They didn't believe in God. They were drinking alcohol. They were fornicating with prostitutes, and yet they were willing to commit. At the beginning, they were doing suicide bombings or suicide missions of just killing Jewish civilians all over the world. And we tend to look at that as like, oh, this is so immoral, and you can judge them morally. But what were they doing? They were trying to advance the cause of their nation, of their collective view of how they see themselves.
So
I think that religion is addressing on all these things. I'm sorry that I'm
right. No, I
think religion is like a cherry on top. I don't think religion is the ultimate driver.
It's possible.
Even for Hamas.
I'm not sure though that I think legacy. I think you might be underestimating how much legacy plays into it. But I do agree that it's not entirely legacy. I think a lot of people, a lot of atheists would die for a cause, even if they knew it wouldn't affect their legacy, let's say. That being said, what if the cause is not an existential threat? What if you're not being attacked? What if you now have a good life, but you don't have the entire land? Would you then still risk your life to have all of the land? Or maybe you even have access to the entire land, but there's this thing that called Israel that still exists, and your life is good. Would that be enough of a driving factor? Like those don't seem like conditions from which.
No, for me it wouldn't. For me it would not.
Right, and I think that's true about the majority, unless, I mean, again, there might still be narratives of legacy and heaven and all that, but the better your conditions are, the less likely you are to go die for something you believe in. In a defensive war, I think, fighting for your survival, sure, but that's not really what we're talking about here. The whole idea is that no matter what, Palestinians will always be okay to be martyrs. I think that there can be conditions that could be created in which that's just not a good deal for them anymore.
So I agree that that's true. But again, that goes back to what we said earlier. I think that the way you and I see the existence of a state, of a Jewish state, as a necessity, or that's how I see it. To them, their necessity is the river to the sea. It's not. Yes, there's probably going to be less terrorism if they have half of that, but there's still going to be terrorism. I don't even know if there'll be less. But I don't think that's their goal. I don't think that's what they're looking for. From what they're saying, for me, listening to their words and watching their actions, I think that I read them as having a singular goal to just cleanse the river to the sea. And the most ethical among them, the most westernized among them, and the most peace-loving among them will say, oh, we just want voting rights and we just want equality with Jews, and let's just have one state solution. That's what they say. And they may be sincere about that. But the reality of that...
Many are sincere about that.
No, I'm not denying that many are sincere, but I think that the reality of that, there is no Arab state in the Middle East where that's what they do. It's always a strongman, leader, a dictator who runs the show and suppresses everybody else brutally. And I think that the result of that reality, in the way the Middle East is run today, will mean us being seriously oppressed and hurt. My people being endangered to an extreme degree. That's just what I see the result of that, even if many of these Palestinians don't directly want that. Many of the guys in Lod really didn't want there to be pogroms, people shooting at Jews in the street and attacking synagogues, but they couldn't stop it. Do you think they're going to be able to stop it when there's armed gangs and like the Jews are a minority and we're helpless because we're not great at street fights? We're kind of good at like military organization, but we're not good at like this kind of street violence to the extent that our neighbors are better at it than us. Like I foresee a very ugly future for us, and that's my fear, that's my nightmare, that's my terror that I have. You don't see it so much, but maybe you judge people with the same like morality that you have, like you think people are like you, and maybe I'm a little less moral than you. Maybe I have more of a violent streak and I judge people a little more like me. I don't know, but this is what I see. This is how I see them behaving. So, and I don't see the ethical side stopping the violent side.
So I actually don't think others. I think some others have a similar moral framework than me. It's that I acknowledge that my moral framework, a lot of it has to do with my environment. So for me, it comes down to this, and I don't want to get back to the same point, but there's two forces at play. There's nature and nurture, right? And assuming all humans have, to an extent, a similar nature, right? You'll see even in like great societies, like let's take a Scandinavian country. Some people there are still murderers, right? So some people's nature is just bad. You have psychopaths, sociopaths, right? They do exist. But the second you have such a large percent of the population that is aimed at destroying their neighbor, at the very least destroying their neighbor's country, not genociding the people, but at least destroying the neighbor's country, that's not nature, it's nurture. So I think my position actually comes from like a level of self-confidence. Maybe I think too highly of myself humanity. And my people. No, not even that. I just recognize that given the right environment, people will be different. So you just create an environment in which people are different.
You think tribal people will become like civic nationalists just because they have indoor toilets and electricity?
I think within a few generations you could turn anybody into anybody. Like, right. Bro,
within a few generations you can do very much.
Look at Germans today. I mean,
You think they're that different than they were then?
For sure. I mean,
they're dominating Europe financially instead of militarily. They're smart. They were always smart.
Yeah,
they learn from their mistakes. They're like, okay, listen, militarily it doesn't work. We work ourselves into insanity.
No, but
well, and then we get wiped out because everybody gangs up.
Again, there are a lot of things.
Let's do it financially.
There are a lot of things about German culture that are the same. And again, it's not a great example because I'm not. We had a world war with Germany. We had to like destroy Germany in order for this to happen. We had to decisively defeat the Nazis. I'm just using it as an example of such a stark contrast of a population who one generation could think it's acceptable to round up Jews and gas them, and then 2 generations later they would never elect somebody like Hitler. Not in this generation. Not at least in the next few generations. So it's just one example of how.
But is that a real change? I mean, they burned. They got burned, so they don't want to go down the same path.
Jews in Berlin, I'd say, are safer than they are in New York today and in London.
Yeah, but they are safer probably than in New York. I don't know. Have you been to Berlin?
Yeah.
Like, when I was in Germany, I was in Munich. I wasn't in Berlin, I was in Munich, right? And I was in like the villages, maybe they were just a little more nationalist. I don't know. The sense I got was that they don't want us there. They're not going to round us up and kill us, but like, do we ever get like what do the Goyim in Europe need to do to give us the message that we don't belong there? Like,
I don't know if that's true.
Like,
I think
how many things do they need to do to like just radiate? Just let us know, Jews, you don't belong.
The meme of anti-Semitism is such a strong one, and it's why it's existed for so long. It's kind of like some religions just catch on and spread, some ideas catch on and spread. Anti-Semitism happens to be a very compelling one for some reason. Part of it is that a lot
you don't
of
want to get into that, huh?
Tricky. I mean, that's like another 2.5 hour session. But again, we could take, there's many more examples. Again, Scandinavian countries are of the most peaceful in the world. Those are Viking blooded individuals, right?
By the way, I don't think the Vikings, just as a side point, the Vikings were only bad because the people who knew how to write, all the monks that got screwed by the Vikings, they wrote the history. Like, you think all of Scandinavians were Vikings? They had farmers. They had
no. It's true that
a portion of their population.
No, without a doubt
and
that our notion.
They were demonized by the church.
I looked into Vikings a little bit. They were more so farmers than they were pillagers.
Berserkers.
Yeah. No. But Vikings, at the end of the day, very much had a warrior culture. They would sail up the coast and attack villages. They even discovered the United States hundreds of years before Columbus. Palestine Ball, I'm putting you on a timeout for spamming. He just wrote 20 times, end the chat. Dude, who are you to decide that? Like,
and this chat, like you and I chat?
No, yeah. He wants us to end the conversation. I think because he wants to bring it to Discord for the lounge. We could do an after party there. But like, dude, like, say it once. I hear you. You don't need to spam. Dude.
Am I taking too much of your time?
No. Our convos normally go this way. We still have good viewership. We have a lot of people here. But by the way, we're at 150 now.
Nice.
And we've been at over 150 the whole 2.5 hours.
How long has this been going on? It's 2.5 hours?
240, yeah. Guys, whoever's just joining us, subscribe if you're new, like, and also express yourself on this video. If you like this conversation, if you found it to be enjoyable,
also
give us that thumbs up.
Let's support. Let's just show some love here.
If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down.
Super chats.
Freedom of expression.
I'm just plugging Adar.
We could do something like this. If you think that I'm just like a radical lefty and Mordechai's like a speaker of truth, do a super chat and at the end put like -Mordechai and he'll get.
Yeah, they'll go to my farm. If you want to support my farm, you could do super chat. My farm is in the West Bank, and the borders of Israel are going to go as far as I can extend. All right. So
we'll give you 70%. We'll give him 70%.
So if you do super chat for me, he'll hook me up. 70% of Mordechai super chats go to me.
Go to you, yeah, exactly. I'm taking 30%. You know.
0 days without Jewish tricks.
We don't.
I'm kidding.
We didn't succeed for no reason. You know. We know how to run a tight ship.
Anyway, but you're basically arguing that, people can change and hope and change. You're being Obama here, like, humans can change their evil nature and improve, and over a few generations, that's definitely true. I agree with that. Right? I do agree with that. But I think you need to be cognizant of how deep tribal culture runs here in the Middle East, and that's something that's been going on since our ancestors, since Abraham, right? And people have been how much cousin marriage affects all of this? Like, what?
No. I want to hear why. But just real quick, Israel advocacy movement gave 10 euros, 50% Mordechai, 50% Adar. Thank you so much. And Jordan sent a super sticker. I don't even know what this is, but thanks for the
99. I think I know Jordan. I think I know what Jordan this is. So, look, let me I don't know how to explain this. So, the rate of cousin marriage in a country like Syria, first cousin marriage.
Mm-mm.
Look it up. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but it's really, really high. Same in the territories, right?
Honestly, it was pretty common for Jews up until recently.
Yeah, it still was common. Yeah, not till recently. But the effects of cousin marriage, consecutive, intergenerational cousin marriage, is that you build these clans with interconnected relationships that are extremely powerful. That means that your daughter is marrying your nephew, Okay, so your connection to your nephew is on many different levels. You develop this really strong tribal structure. There's a price you pay, right? You're going to have a lot of issues, genetic issues and whatnot. And in Saudi Arabia, they have a registrar where they try to genetically test to prevent the negative effects of it. But one of the effects of these things is that your tribal identity is so strong that you don't have national identity. It's very hard. That's why countries like Syria will never have a very good military. Not because they're not strong or not because they're not smart, but the reason we're always going to destroy them is because they promote each other based on these family ties, not based on talent. It's not a meritocracy. Like Bibi Netanyahu's kid goes to Tzal, he doesn't go straight to Kurs Makim. He doesn't become a general right away, but like Assad's family become head of the armored corps, head of the Air Force without any training, right? So it's kind of how those societies are structured. When you understand that, you also understand how they view themselves, how they view themselves collectively. These things don't get unpacked and unraveled very fast. You know? I know this is a crazy tangent, but like the church outlawed cousin marriage in Europe. England was just like that before the church outlawed it, right? Everybody was cousins, everybody was house of this, house of that, endless tribal wars, just like ISIS and Syria and so on. And that was ended by the church because they decided no more cousin marriage. They didn't, for whatever reasons, they did it. But I don't think that we can change the Arab mindset by acknowledging the Nakba and by giving them money. That's not what's gonna do it. They need a very serious reformation. It's not up to us to do it. They need to do it themselves. They need to do a serious reformation in their religion and their civilization, and they can go back to having a great age, like the golden age of Spain, like they've had good times, and they could go back to it. But it's not. We can't drive that. They have to do it themselves, and I pray to God that they will. But right now, we need to stay on guard, man. Don't let the guard down.
I would. Yeah, but keep in mind that at no point did I say anything that lets our guard down. Like I do understand that. I don't want to call it a straw man because it's an argument that many on the left make. So that's what you're debating. But I proposed a whole bunch of different policy positions we could take, things to change the situation that don't allow us to that don't cause us to let our guard down, right?
So I would agree. Anything that doesn't include us like compromising on our security, I would be for. Like you said, you wouldn't serve in the West Bank, right?
No, but if
you said you wouldn't serve in the West Bank militarily, right?
Not now. I did. I did serve in the West Bank.
Yeah, but you would refuse. You would
today. I would. Yeah. Today. I would, yeah.
Okay, so that means that you are willing to give up our security because today, if nobody serves in the West Bank, you know that there are forces in the West Bank that would kill Jews. So in order to satisfy some other moral belief that you have, you're willing to sacrifice the security of your nation, of your people.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I might need to reform my stance on this. I'll need to think on it because I do acknowledge that we can't do unilateral pullout. So if I acknowledge we can't do unilateral
you won't be part of the occupation. Yeah.
Well, actually, no. I could defend this position. You were close, but I could defend this position.
I'm not trying to get you.
No. It's true, but it almost shows an inconsistency in my logic. So I appreciate you calling that out, but not entirely, because we could acknowledge that that our occupation is harmful and that we need to do more to change it. And if Israel sees that many of their soldiers are refusing to serve there, then it could get them to reform how they approach the military occupation. So no, I would stand by that.
But that can also, but obviously
what the effect could be, but no, it's.
You're willing to pay the price.
It wouldn't cause more death because there's enough soldiers. If Israel saw that a lot of soldiers were refusing to serve, then they would ask themselves why, and they would need to do some kind of reform in order to make it work. And I would support that reform. So no.
Okay. But when you say that there's enough soldiers to do it, Yeah, so but on the same breath, you're saying, but if enough people refuse, then Israel would change its 10. So you're basically for depriving the IDF of the manpower it needs to defend its people in order to achieve some moral goal, okay, that may or may not work. Just to be clear, that's what you're saying. So there's a goal. There's a moral goal, which may or may not work. But in order to achieve that goal, you're willing to sacrifice the safety of some of your people, at least.
No, I agree with everything you said.
That's something to think about.
No. I agree with everything you said until the sacrifice.
Because you don't like how it sounds, but how is that not?
Because that's not.
People aren't manning those checkpoints. The terrorists in Shechem.
No, but look, what the military would do, if not enough soldiers would voluntarily go, then they start paying civilian contractors to go in their place. It wouldn't come at the expense. And what I actually do.
You want a Blackwater situation where you have like. Do you know what civilian mercenaries are like in war zones?
Yeah, I know what Blackwater's like, but that's not what it has to be here. So again, we don't know how it would play out, but the whole idea that if a bunch of soldiers stop serving, then it would somehow put Jews in danger. I don't agree with that point. It would cause we would just replace it with civilian forces, or get us to understand why soldiers don't want to serve. Hold on.
Do you realize what would happen if you unleashed me instead of the IDF? Like free civilian, a militia of dads.
Hold on.
Going out there to bring order.
I agree with you that not every form of a civilian force is preferred to a military force, but I do think, as I proposed way earlier on, that we should replace it with the civilian force of people who are highly trained in treat. Exactly, that treat Palestinians.
But that's not what's going to happen. But that's not what's going to happen when the IDF, when conscripted soldiers like yourself refuse to show up for duty, and that does happen, and if that happens at a large enough pace, how do you think the IDF is going to manage its security needs vis-a-vis the Palestinians? It's not going to say, oh, now let's get these really nice civilian contractors that Adar Weinreb thought of. What they're going to do is they're going to hire mercenaries, probably Russians, okay? And those mercenaries are going to be given free rein because they're paid and their job is to bring safety. And I think that they're going to be way less merciful than the IDF.
Another alternative is that our government will start to ask why our own soldiers refuse to serve. And maybe it's because there's certain policies in place. Maybe they don't like the abuse, and they'll make a real effort. Honestly, this will probably happen before they go and hire contractors. They'll probably try and fix the situation where soldiers are not excited, but open to serving in the West Bank. And what they might have to do in doing so is make the conditions better. So we don't know how it could quite play out, but I think that it is defensible to say I wouldn't serve, even though I acknowledge that some security there is needed. I want to do some more super chats.
Super chats, yeah, let's do it.
Mendy goes, MDMA, psychedelics, religion for Israel, Palestine. Are you saying all of them together? Yeah, cool. I support that. I think, like, I'm agnostic.
What he's saying.
Saying MDMA, psychedelics, religion for Israel, Palestine. So he's saying those things are needed. I'm not quite sure. If you click,
psychedelics are needed. Religion, we have too much religion, not too little religion. For Israel, Palestine, what's ILPS? Israel something?
No, IP. It's just IP.
Oh, okay.
I definitely think psychedelics and MDMA could help.
What's MDMA? Is that a kind of drug?
Yeah, it's Molly. In Hebrew, they call it MD.
Cool.
It's what ecstasy is made out of. It makes you feel a level of unconditional love that's unimaginable, and happiness. Like imagine
in the morning when I wear tefillin.
No. Imagine that feeling, the happiest you've ever been. Now, like 10x that. Okay, fine. You do tefillin, maybe you hit high levels.
I'm joking. I wish I had that when I had tefillin.
Okay,
I'm not on that level.
5x that. It's an unimaginable level of happiness and openness. You unconditionally love everybody. Wait, don't tell me those. We had more super chats. Where'd they go? Why'd they disappear so quickly? Hold up. We have them in the backlog, so there's no concern. Hold up. Let me just refresh. Starhopper given a super chat of $10. Says Heart Mordechai. Okay, so I guess you're getting 70% of that.
I'm getting $7. Yeah.
Starhopper, despite our disagreements and our constant trolling of one another, I appreciate the $3 donation. It really means a lot. Hold on, we have one more.
I appreciate also everything that you guys are doing.
Going to the farm, yeah. Israel's aggression is ultimately. This is Shishak gave $5. Israel's aggression is ultimately.
Another biblical character.
Oh, cool. Israel's aggression is ultimately compromising its own security in the long term. I agree. Thanks for the donation, Shishak.
That sounds like something Shishak would say.
Oh, yeah?
He was a king. He was an Egyptian king who fought us, tried to invade us. Shashank, I think that the Egyptian is Shashank. Whatever. I'm not going to spurg about Tanakh right now. This is not that kind of stream.
So Or goes, Adar, it is what's happening. Civilian forces becoming a large segment in the West Bank since the 2000s. The slow process was happening. That's interesting. Can you send me more information on that? I'd love to get better informed if that's the case. But also keep in mind, as we mentioned, civilian force is not by default better. It could.
By the way,
I'm
part of the civilian force technically. Protect my farm.
But I'll be completely honest. I will be honest with you, Mordechai. You are friends with your Palestinian neighbors.
Very close with them, bro. They're my friends.
They would probably prefer to see you there as a security. And again, this might not be true across the board.
I go to their homes without weapons, like unarmed. They love it. Like during the conflict, I just walk into his house without any weapon. Even though I'm a settler and I'm like smoking shisha with him and drinking his tea and with friendship and trust. None of this is personal. And I wish things were different, you know?
I don't know. To me, that shows that if we're...
I really do believe in coexistence on an individual level. It has nothing to do with the larger national conflict. Because collective thinking doesn't always have to water down to your day-to-day life. You know?
So wouldn't you agree that those people who have a personal connection to a Jew are less likely to try to kill a Jew? Because they...
Yes and no. I think so, and I feel that when I speak to them, but I also read the history of the area and have so many cases of people who were their best friends with their Jewish neighbor, and then when something flipped in their mind, they murdered them and their wives and children without blinking an eye. You know, so that goes both ways. There were cases where they saved Jews, and there were cases where, like, even now, in like the settlement next to my farm, people who worked and had good relationships just came in with a suicide vest and blew themselves up. So I trust and love them, and I go to their homes, but I'm cognizant of the fact that something can happen that would flip everything. You know?
So I think to answer your question, the question I asked you, you think that yes, it decreases the chance, but it doesn't ensure. It doesn't ensure.
Exactly. It helps, but it doesn't ensure.
So we could acknowledge, if we are looking at what we do to create environmental conditions in which we could have peace, I'm
willing to go with that. Yeah.
Contact with one another is important. This is an interesting. You might have a more informed opinion, but Adar, what do you think about the claims of cannabis, cannabis? Well,
okay.
Okay, yeah, exactly. I was gonna say those are biblical words that I don't even recognize.
Okay. So what he's saying is, there's a list of. I'll explain. Okay. There's a biblical list of the incense. When you came to the temple in Jerusalem, inshallah, it'd get rebuilt soon. Right? It wasn't just you brought a sacrifice to God, but the first thing that hit you from your entrance to Jerusalem was the unique incense that they had. And they had a very unique recipe for that incense. That incense, you just got a whiff of it, and you would transport you to another place. One of the ingredients of that incense is this thing called Cannabis. Some people, some researchers theorize that cannabis is cannabis. Literally, that's where cannabis and cannabis, and that was part of what gave the incense of the temple such a potent flavor. And that, together with the music of the Levites and the roasting meat of the sacrifice and the energy of being at Harabait and like place that God chose, that was the central thing of Am Yisrael, and hopefully we get back to that soon.
Interesting. Yeah. So I don't have.
I just use that as a plug for my rebuilding the temple fantasy. I know, but I couldn't control myself. But that was the answer to this question.
My thoughts in general on marijuana and psychedelics is that I think they've been historically used to attain higher spiritual understanding, both in the East and the South and the West. I think across the board, indigenous populations have used psychedelics to reach higher level of understanding, and it wouldn't surprise me if Jews did as well. There's even one theory that the burning bush is just a mushroom trip. Just a mushroom trip.
I think that, so I don't know about regarding the burning bush, but I think that the Qumran community were basically kind of drug dealers. I think they sold cannabis. I don't remember. I have to look it up, but there was some evidence that that's what they were doing. That was their business. No.
Interesting. We got another super chat. Mendy, thank you for the $5. Psychedelics allow people to understand religious core intent and see across Quran, Bible, and New Testament. We have to read each other's books with a broader mind. Yeah, I can get behind that. What I would say with my experience with psychedelics is they really are like an ego death. They help you better.
Everybody's talking about DMT. Did you do DMT?
Yeah, I've done DMT a few times. It's pretty fascinating because we have DMT in our brain, and it's released when they say when we're born, when we dream, and when we die. But when we die, a lot of it is released. When you dream, just a little bit.
I've never taken any of this, by the way. None.
Yeah, so DMT is fascinating because, first of all, you if you smoke enough. By the way,
you eat it. You eat it or you smoke it.
So there's ayahuasca, which is like the South American brew, which you drink, and that is also DMT is the active compound, but because you ingest it, it's way longer. It feels differently. DMT in its pure form is often smoked. It's like turned either into a crystal or it's mixed with tobacco or something, and then you smoke it. But I've never done ayahuasca. I've smoked DMT, and if you smoke enough, you actually do what's called a blast off. You're in a different world, and you don't have the recollection that you smoked. You don't say, oh, I'm here because I'm tripping. You're just there. Kind of like, when you dream, you don't know you're in a dream. You literally you don't have any psychological continuity when you dream. Like last night, I dreamt that I was on a settlement in Mars. I was one of the first visitors. Like that shit's crazy. So
Jews settling Mars, huh? Already.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's that's my settler colonialist mindset. You see that? But so DMT is similar in the sense that you could smoke it, and then it hits you in a second. A second later, you're in a different world, and everything is like crazy kaleidoscopes. Like you're looking in a kaleidoscope, and many people who have done it sense the presence of other beings there with them. As did I one time. I was in the presence of these angelic-like beings, and I felt like I was floating up with them, kind of like angels.
When you come back from that.
Real quick, kind of like angels taking you to heaven, which is interesting because where do these stories of going to an afterlife and being with these beings like angels, that might just come from experiencing DMT. Like people have near-death experiences and they say, whoa, now I believe in God. I met God when I had a near-death experience. That potentially might be a DMT trip. What happens after that DMT trip? Do they... Is it just black and you're gone for eternity? High likelihood that's the case. Or is there something else? Who knows? But yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, what were you asking?
No, I was going to ask if when you come, does the trip make you like look at the world differently after, or is just an experience, an isolated experience?
No, most psychedelics do give you
How does it
something
change you? How does DMT specifically, how does that change you?
So DMT, I would say, had less of a lasting impact on me than things like mushrooms, psilocybin. But people who actually drink it and have a trip, that's like the ingestible DMT, and you feel it for many hours. They have profound, long-lasting effects. But mushrooms, for example, gave me an understanding that all nature and all life is interconnected, and we need to love and respect one another.
That's something that you didn't think before that, like you needed the mushrooms.
No, it's
and
not like
people say these things, and I'm like, okay, that's like a beauty queen's like response when they ask you what she wants, like world peace. Like, okay, great. Like,
it's hard for me to
say Miss Universe. Like,
it's hard for me to say.
Mock it, but like,
no.
How does it change you? What's different? Is it you just saw that you already knew in a clearer way?
No, so again, it depends on everybody's personal experience. I'm not saying, had I not had any psychedelic experiences, I don't know how different I would be, but it certainly feels like my humanist outlook, a lot of it was contributed to by the use of psychedelics. I think that helped me understand it and stand by these values and understand that they're right, and understand that like harming another is like harming yourself. And I know some religious texts even talk about this as well. But again, as we mentioned, many indigenous populations use them. Religious texts very well may be inspired by psychedelic trips. And to be honest, it does also give you a sense of a higher power. When you take psychedelics, you kind of feel like there's a God. You could really feel that God. And again, I still remain agnostic when it comes to things like God, afterlife, karma, all the metaphysics. But you definitely, when you're on psychedelics, you feel it. There's been some studies to show the profound and long-lasting effects psychedelics have. It's being used today for trauma, PTSD, other psychological conditions, and I think we're really entering.
My friends are saying. My friends are texting me that this show has devolved into Joe Rogan. They're talking about DMT now.
If I come visit you in the settlement, and I bring some, let's say, mushrooms, would you?
I wouldn't take mushrooms, man. I wouldn't take mushrooms.
All right, I'll bring.
Listen, I'll tell you something. If you took it, I wouldn't say anything. You could take what you want, but with my kids,
you got to do it in the right environment.
Keep them away from the stuff. I got to be a role model for them. It's too late. You'd have got me when I'm 19, 20 years old or something else. But now I'm like in my 40s, like worry about college and kids. Like I'm not, I can't. My kid's going to the army next year. DMT, I'm not taking that right now.
I hear that.
But I'm interested in like, yeah.
But honestly, here's the honest truth. I talk about them and I advocate for them, but it's not like I use them a lot. I probably take psychedelics like once a year. No more than that, maybe once, twice a year, because I don't view them as, it's not like a drug that you take for pleasure. I view it as a journey, like an introspective and transcendental experience. So I take them with the utmost respect. Some more super chats. Our friend Orjan goes, Mordechai, do you believe the Amalekites are today's Palestinians?
No.
Okay. Thanks for the 50.
Was a super chat? Was a super chat for me or for you?
He didn't mention you at the end, but we'll split that one. I got you.
Right.
Starhopper goes, Adar, your ego is huge. Maybe you need more after all. Maybe.
I don't think you have a huge ego, do you?
No. Starhopper just is. He's a hater.
Starhopper is your nemesis.
I mean, he's like the guy who's been in chats almost since day one. Never changed his mind on anything. Hates Arabs. Same narrative.
He's like a base right-wing guy.
Yeah, but like way less nuance and understanding than what you have, for example. Like just your typical like, and I don't even think he lives on the land. He lives in America or something. He's just nonstop hating. Like we can never have peace with them. We need to fight forever. They'll always want to kill us. So yeah, it's, for example, if somebody I respected, if you were to come to me as a friend, Mordechai, and say, Adar, I think your ego is big, I would take that to heart and reflect on it, and and see how I could improve. But when someone like Starhopper says it, it's it means nothing. When you do things in the public sphere, you need to know how to not let hateful comments get to you. But at the same time, look for constructive feedback when people give it to you, because we're all growing, we're all learning. So if somebody
I've been giving you feedback for like weeks, right? At the beginning.
No. Whoever gives me constructive feedback, I appreciate it. Like, thanks in advance, everybody in chat right now. Thanks in advance for giving me constructive feedback. If it's just like a stupid comment, then it's not. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. I see Sparkle Love in the chat saying, I'm not an expert, but I own a large cannabis company and read every study that I possibly can. Yeah, Sparkle Love is actually SOG Cannabis that supports us on Patreon. So at the beginning of every episode, we shout out SOG Cannabis. That's Sparkle Love. Thanks for the support. Phyllis Lawfer gives $5 with no comment. Thank you. Appreciate it. Super Chat's cool.
This is your first time doing Super Chats?
Yeah, no, Friday. They just activated it on Friday. It wasn't available in Israel. Honestly, that was like making me hate. I was like losing faith in Zionism, the fact that we had no super channel. Honestly, fuck this country. And then it's like, okay. Yeah. I was accepted. Let's see. This is a funny comment. Red Wine goes, weed dumbs people down. That's why Biden's in office and not Cruz. That's an interesting one. I don't know if it dumbs you down. I know that the studies do say that
long term it kills brain cells, right?
No, it actually doesn't kill brain cells. There's no evidence of it killing brain cells, but long term it does affect, it affects your short term memory. So if you're smoking a lot, your memory is going to be your short term memory won't be as good, and the longer you're smoking daily, the worse your short term memory is going to be. But it does seem, and I haven't seen enough data on this, but once you stop smoking, then your memory comes back. So it's not like a forever thing. Like I used to smoke daily. I don't smoke every day anymore just because it takes away my motivation and my inhibitions. Like I'm as is not like a particularly hard worker. And when I smoke, it just destroys my motivation. But my short-term memory is pretty like fire. Like I'll play you in a game of memory. Like come at me, bro.
Any other chats we got to do? I'm getting a bit tired.
Do you want to sign out? You got to go.
Unless there's any other chats that I need to respond to or anything.
Let's see. We're doing. Well, people want you to join the after party on Discord.
How do I do that? Is that like voice, or do I need to type a lot?
No, it's just voice. Just voice.
How does that work?
You just click a button and you're connected, and then people could ask you questions, share thoughts. You could stay even for like 15 minutes and then be out.
So is that I can do it here, or do I got to go to my phone?
No, we're gonna sign off. We'll wrap it up. Everyone, I'm tossing the Discord in the chat. Mordechai, I'll send it to you on WhatsApp. Whoever wants,
Thank you so much, Adar. This was fun.
Yeah, for sure. We could definitely do it again. This is the first time we did a full debate without a mod. So look at that, no mod. Yeah, no, I'd love to have you on again. Whether it's a debate with me or somebody else, or for a panel, we could figure it out. Yeah, that'd be cool. Anyways, hold on. There's a question that I want to read, Mordechai, because you debated her. It's about Syrian girl.
Oh, okay.
What do you say about that? I'm not gonna read it word for word because there's a little ableism there. But what would you say about that Syrian girl that says Syria must conquer Israel and create a one-state solution with Palestine? So, Syrian girl on Twitter, she has a YouTube channel. Yeah, she's anti-Semitic for sure. Super cringy takes. Mordechai actually debated her. You could find that debate on. You can share it
or something.
It was on.
I'll send you the link.
Killstream,
yeah, Ralph. Yeah.
What's my thoughts on her? I mean, her contribution to this world is making this world a worse place, as is many activists. She's making people more fearful, more hateful. She's putting in people's minds shitty conspiracy theories. I'd have her on the channel with pleasure if she'd be willing to come and speak to an Israeli.
She doesn't speak to. She actually asked her if she wants to go on your channel.
You did ask her if she'd come on, right?
Yeah, she told me I don't speak to Zionists. I said, it's like, I don't want to say the word I said. I was like, but I'm way more Zionist than Adar, right? And
way
he
more,
spoke to me. So she said, well, you're Syrian. So I was willing to talk to you because you're Syrian, but Adar is like a Khazar. I'm not talking to him.
I'm a purebred Khazar.
But you see, Adar, she respects me, right? She's in my DMs, like we discuss things. Why does she respect me? Because I'm unapologetically, militantly Zionist. She looks at, I don't mean to knock you, but like she looks at a deep, peace-loving person with total disgust. There's no place to go. She doesn't understand you guys. Right?
I actually,
to me, she understands. She gets it. If it was only if people like me ran Israel, I think we'd get along with Syria. We'd figure it out. Would more Palestinians die? Less? The Palestinian issue would barely be an issue. I'm sorry. Yeah.
No. I think that had she and I had a conversation, that I would have an ability to an extent, change some of her views quite successfully, and she wouldn't view me as just some Khazar anymore. Just, she was more open to talking to you because you have some familial connection, but I don't know if after hearing my views, then that she would say, oh, he's just like one of those globalist Jew types. Maybe, but I'm not sure.
Like we were discussing, like Rabin, right? Trying to give the Golan to Assad. And she's like, I'm glad they shot Rabin. Because if he would have given, like, had Rabin given us the Golan and we would have had to make a deal, we'd have to make peace with the Zionists, and then they would have taken over the world. Like she would rather not have the Golan Heights, right? And be in a state of war with us with the hope of wiping us out, than have the Golan Heights and not have a conflict.
Right.
I don't know if you and her would find any common ground, because what she wants and what you want are not the same.
I'll tell you, you might be right, and I'll tell you what the biggest issue is with people who have large audiences when they build their audience on a very specific narrative. It's that it makes it harder for you to change because your popularity is dependent on you keeping the same views. That's also true. So if Syrian girl comes now, right? If Syrian girl comes now and says, you know what, I think I might have been wrong. This, that. Aside from like the amount of humility and ego death you need to acknowledge you were wrong after being so adamant about certain positions, but all her followers, or a large portion of her followers, would just be gone. So she's not, even if internally she knows she's wrong, she'll never admit it. So I would debate people like that, but the reason I would do it would be to just to expose the absurdity of their position and give the audience like better tools in how to debate bad people like that. I'm not confident that those people would change, but it's not always about changing people, and it's also about convincing some of her audience as well. I think
a lot of her followers a lot of people reached out to me after that debate and like the DMs and like, yeah, you had a good point there and so on. So I do every time I debate one of these Nazis or one of these anti-Semites, I get some people reaching out to me,
Yeah.
Get some interesting stories there.
I will say this, because I do see some people mentioning in chat. It's true. Syrian girl by no means represents the people of Syria. She's one individual who is very extreme. She's neo-Nazi-esque. Like she's you could consider her a neo-Nazi Syrian expansionist. I don't know. Like that. That's probably how we.
She's greater. She's like Greater Syria. They should call her
Greater Syria. Yeah.
Greater Syria girl.
Exactly. If she's willing to come on the show, we'd have her. We'd bring on a lot of the quite detestable people. We'd have Nick Fuentes on here and some of the other neo-Nazis.
You would have Nick on? I wouldn't talk to Nick.
Yeah, I'd have Nick on for a one-on-one. Yep. Because I think that I could convince not him but some of his audience. I think there's certain things. Yeah. Because I'll tell you what it comes down to, and maybe I'm exposing a card, but what hateful people don't understand is that they strengthen the identity of the people that they hate. Okay, so people like Nick Fuentes strengthens Jewish identity. Nazis strengthen Jewish identity. Jewish identity and Zionism is stronger because of neo-Nazis. Right. So what I would do is explain to him that his contribution to the world is not only spreading fear off of baseless conspiracy theories to his people, he's making his people more fearful, and he's directing their hate at a group of people who, A, are victimized blindly by his hate, and B, whose identity is strengthened by his hate.
But he wants that. You realize that's what he wants, because his goal is for Jews and Gentiles to be separate. Kind of like us, like me in a way. So like he wants American Jews to be uncomfortable and to leave America. He thinks that we're a toxic things we're a toxic people and we shouldn't be in his country. So the fact that it strengthens us in Israel doesn't bother him. He doesn't need Israel to be destroyed. He's like, I don't want to help Israel, and I don't want to have to deal with Jews here in my country. That's his view. So that won't work against him, really. It would work against a Palestinian anti-Semite. Like Palestinian anti-Semite, you say, listen, by being anti-Semitic, all these other Jews are becoming more Zionist. They're going to come to Israel. They're going to settle in Efrat. They're going to settle in the West Bank. You're never going to have a state. That may be an argument. But for a guy like Fuentes, for a Syrian girl, that's an argument. But for Fuentes, no. Fuentes wants Jewish identity to be strong. He wants Jews out of his space. He hates Jews.
But what if you make the case that a lot of his claims are that Jews have a lot of power and they are looking for more power? Any people who are scared are less likely to give up power. So his narrative doesn't only strengthen Zionism; it also strengthens Jewish need to maintain having some kind of power and influence in this world. Like you could,
but that's like
that way as well. Yeah. And another one. This one's kind of messed up, but he gets all conspiratorial. Imagine if you say, "Have you heard of the conspiracy that the neo-Nazis are actually funded by Zionists in order to strengthen Jewish identity?" And Nick, I actually heard that you're funded by neo-Nazis, by Zionists. What does your audience think about that? Like that's almost something that you throw a wrench. You literally throw a wrench in the neo-Nazi community that gets them to the point where they can no longer trust their leaders, because they think their leaders are just controlled opposition in order to strengthen Zionism.
That's a game we could play, and it would work. It would destroy Nick, because these people are so paranoid. They would do it. The problem is, here's the problem of something like that. You do it once, you do it twice, it works. But that means that the Groyper, the neo-Nazis, are going to have to generate such hateful people in order to show that they're not like funded by Zog. So they're going to have to get worse and worse. And I don't know, like, if you want to, like, I don't know if it's healthy to escalate to that far either. So I'm not sure. Right. Maybe it is, but it's something you need to worry about.
No, that very well may be a tactic that ultimately makes neo-Nazis more radical. Like the whole idea would be to like de-radicalize them to an extent. And really, the best way to do it, like a lot of his conspiracy theory shit, can be debunked fairly easily, and not fairly easily. Conspiracy theories are tough, but if you do enough research, you could break them down and kind of present it as like a paranoia, and him just putting his paranoia on other people and profiting off scaring people up, baseless claims like that. That might be a more effective approach.
When I debated a Syrian girl, I kept on accusing her of being Jewish, which I do sometimes. Do you know how much that like her fan base got scared? All those Nazis were like, "Oh my God, Syrian girl's Jewish. Judah said she's Jewish. Maybe she's like part of the Zionist plot." Like, I didn't mean that to be the case, but that's what ended up happening. You know?
Honestly, that would be a funny one to spread. But again, we don't know the long-term impact that would have. Like, that's not for sure helpful. It's fun. Like, and this is true in a lot of like discourse. Sometimes the most appealing thing to say, the most call it fun, like a snarky remark, good comeback isn't the most helpful, right? So we're constantly, and I deal with this in these discussions too. Like, you want to give like a good zinger, but so it's a constant pull between give that good zinger or say something more productive. So I think it's kind of like that. It's probably not the most productive. We could go to the Mordechai, you could do. Yeah, I do.
I'll do a few minutes of Discord before I bounce.
Okay, I do want to ask you one last question because I see someone asking it here, and I'd like your perspective on it. What's your thoughts on the new Israeli government?
Oh my God, my thoughts on the new Israeli government. It's like, look, I voted for Bennett every time, always Bennett. And the reason I voted for Bennett was because his platform made sense to me. It was a conscience, but it wasn't personal, and it wasn't because he was right wing or left wing. His policies, economically, politically, everything made sense to me. I voted based on policy. He got 6 seats. I still don't understand. Call me stupid. I don't understand how a guy with 6 seats gets to be prime minister. I understand that he's a kingmaker, but this democracy that we have wasn't designed so that a guy with 6 Knesset members in the Knesset can leverage his position and pry his way to be prime minister. The fact that I voted for you doesn't change the fact that the process has been abused. The whole election was dirty. People were voting for people who didn't like Bennett, didn't like Ben Gvir, were voting for him because they wanted the right-wing bloc to be big enough. People that didn't like Saar were voting for him because they wanted to screw Bibi. It was just one big clusterfuck of Jews like being oiberchuchem, like voting in ways they didn't believe in order to get some secondary thing. So I'm really unhappy with the process. But I will say that maybe, just maybe, getting rid of Bibi, having a right-wing prime minister and defense minister, and merits guys Zandberg is going to be head of environment. Maybe she'll be very good as an environmental minister, and maybe Bennett will be really, really good as a prime minister. Who knows? I'm hoping that it works out great, and it actually may be the recipe for a more professional, diverse government. But the way we got here is not cool. This is not how democracy is supposed to be. It's like a shtetl, and it's a joke. That's what I think.
I agree to a large degree with what you said. I'm kind of excited about it. I think it's probably not a stable government.
Who'd you vote for?
Either last time I voted for Meretz, the time before that I voted for Gantz. So for me, it's I do like, it's often a strategic vote.
See, you don't vote for who you like. You vote for some sort of like Jewish trick. Like, I'm voting for Gantz because he's against Bibi, so you should get.
But our political system incentivizes that. That's the problem. Like, it's the system's the problem, not the voters. You know.
I vote my conscience. I vote whose platform I like. I refuse to vote for religious parties. I find religious parties revolting, right? And I felt that like Bennett's not a religious party. There's Shaked, there's like secular nationalists. It's not a religious party. That's my conscience. But I didn't vote for Bibi because I want Bibi to have more power or whatever. I voted for the guy who had the platform I agreed with. I think that's how the system works best.
No, I hear that. But it's kind of like there's a game theoretic principle there that only works if everyone does it. And because not everyone's going to do it, no one's going to do it, kind of thing. But
apply that to serving in the West Bank.
No, but that's not. I don't want to get into this now. But just activism is dependent on many individuals doing stuff. You know, so it's true. What you're saying is true. You're being an activist and you're voting. If you publicly speak about it, then you could convince others to do it, and one day it might actually make a difference. But we should just reform the whole parliamentary system like this. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in the Middle East. I don't know if it works anywhere, but like We need something different. Benevolent AI dictatorship. That's what I want. Let the machines decide. They know best.
I'm coming around to the idea of a dictatorship.
No, I hear you. We could have a deeper conversation on that.
I would take Gantz as a dictator, or Bibi as a dictator, or Bennett as a dictator over the mess of constant haggling and handling and machering that needs to go on to run this country. Give them a 10-year contract. We don't bother them for 10 years.
No, so I could get behind that a dictatorship that expires. The problem with dictatorships is once in a while you could get a benevolent dictator, but then they pass away, and who replaces them? Eventually you're going to have, some power hungry dictator who's going to abuse their power. So if you give somebody, I think term limits create a huge problem, that it causes us to view things in terms of 4 years. Not in long term.
Give a guy, and that's it. You can only that's your whole legacy. 10 years, you're a dictator, and that's going to be your legacy. Legacy is important. I don't think Gantz would screw up the country if he was a dictator for 10 years. Do I agree with him on everything? No, I would be for it. Bibi, Gantz, Bennett, all of them. Maybe not Zandberg because she's an idiot, but I would vote for anyone who. Maybe not Sar, because whatever, but like Bibi, all these guys it's better than what we have right now. What we have now is untenable.
No, I agree. The short-term political cycles gets us to be very short-sighted in how we do things. Like when we look at countries like China and Singapore and the UAE, put their human rights abuses aside because they're quite atrocious. Not Singapore as much, but one of the reasons they're succeeding economically is because they're viewing things in terms of like 100 years, not 4 years. And you can get so much more done when you take a long-term vision in place. So we need to find a way to have good human rights and B, long-term vision. How do you do that? Who knows? AI. Okay, we're gonna wrap it up. If you want to get in touch with Mordechai, you can find his contact information in the description. We're gonna move it to Discord. I dropped the link in chat. Discord
is just voice, or is it also video?
If we're over 25 people, then it's only voice. I think it'll be only voice. Yeah, you can turn the video off. When you enter Discord on the left-hand side, you'll see it says lounge. Click lounge, and you'll be connected. And that's it. Everyone who joined us, thank you so much. This was a great session. If you're new here, like, subscribe. Thank you to the super chats and patrons. Where would we be without you? And thank you again, Mordechai. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.